Okay, it's 6 o'clock, and I would like to call to order our regular board meeting of the Woodford County Public Schools. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to recognize a student, a former student, class of 2021, Mr. Jackson Crook. Mr. Crook passed away suddenly last weekend, and we'd like to offer his family our thoughts and prayers and ask everyone to keep their family in your thoughts as well. And we'd like to take a moment of silence to remember him. Thank you. We'll start off with our roll call. We have 5 members present, all in person. And we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is on the back wall there if anybody can't see it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, any proposed amendments to the agenda?
I do have one. I had asked that the reading and math interventionist be placed on the agenda for this month at last month's meeting, and then I followed up with an email. I don't see it on here, so I would just ask that we add that as C under discussion
Under
items.
discussion? Sure.
Yeah, and then next month to have it on as an action item.
So I'll need a motion for that.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And the motion passes 5-0. All right, so I've added that. And we'll move into, so we've changed our agenda a little bit. We've moved our recognitions right up to the front. So to start off, we'll call Miss Bailey up for our student recognitions, community recognitions.
Good evening. Okay, tonight we have 2 recognitions. So we are starting with the KSBA Electronic Banner Artwork recognition. Southside art teacher Leah McAllister and 2 5th grade students, Ava Ray Courtney and Claire Jones, designed the 2023 banner, which will be displayed, or I think was displayed, at the 2023 KSBA Annual Conference. The artwork was displayed in conference communications, displayed in a gallery at the event, printed in a commemorative conference booklet, and more. The conference was held at the Galt House Hotel in Louisville and involved superintendents and board members from across the entire state. This year's conference theme was "The Sky is the Limit." So I know Ms. McAllister is here. I'm not sure if our students were able to attend tonight. But Ms. McAllister, if you want to come up here, we can get a picture with you and the board.
And I think, Dr. Rayburn, did we have a picture of the artwork? It was fantastic. Okay.
Okay, next we are highlighting the several people who participated, or rather made Community Christmas possible for several of our students and their families. Community Christmas is a special event that provides gifts to children whose families are in need of financial assistance. This event ensures that all children feel celebrated and cared for during the Christmas season, and that all parents and guardians experience the joy of watching their child's face light up on Christmas morning. We are so grateful to our incredible community partners for joining with us to provide Community Christmas for our children and families. We want to say a special thank you to the following individuals who played a large role in this effort. They are Celine Galvin, Jasmine Hazelwood, Deanne Watts, Mallory White, Angela Reed, Tammy Heston, and she is a member of the Church of Christ and also a retired teacher. Oh, and the first several were our FRC coordinators. And Derek Sumerel, minister of Versailles Church of Christ, and thank you also to Versailles Church of Christ for hosting the event. We also want to say a special thank you to our local churches and community partners who donated gifts and sponsored children. So if you all want to come up here, we can also get a photo.
Are we all going to do this one too?
Okay, then we'll move on to our superintendent remarks.
Yes, I'm going to try to limit all my positive things. Well, it's all positive, but my positive things so I don't steal everybody's good news report. But I do want to give a shout out to our boys basketball team who won the district tournament Friday night, beat Collins by 2-3 points. Really close game. I know we've beaten them earlier in the season, but for the district championship, that's a big game. And I noticed today that Collins was in the top 25 ranking in the state of Kentucky. So it's a pretty big undertaking to get them in the district tournament. So that is my part of the good news report, but also a part of my superintendent remarks. I wanted to talk a little bit about the legislation that is that we're seeing right now, and I won't talk about all of them because there's a ton of bills that have been filed. I think I heard this morning 880 some odd bills for the short session. House Bill 30, that's the one that talks about our restrooms and locker rooms and the privacy. As of right now, it has just been filed. There's not been any movement on that. It would require students to use the restroom of their biological sex. So as of right now, it's still just been filed. There's been no movement. I don't think it's even been assigned to a committee yet. The distilled spirit tax, been in contact with Judge James Kay and Mayor Brian Troggett on that one because it won't just affect our school systems. It will also affect the counties. I think Judge Kay said that he had talked to the fire department. For us, it would be approximately a loss of $1.5 million if they end that tax. Now, the way the bill's written, it would start in 2026 to be phased out by sometime 2034, 2035 to be completely phased out. So there was a large movement in Bardstown today amongst school districts and amongst counties and city governments. We are, Judge Kay and I and Mayor Troggett are planning on trying to get together here. Haven't had a chance to reach out to Mayor Thurman yet. But we plan on trying to get together this week and just put out some sort of statement as to what it would do to not just the school system here, but Woodford County in general. So that one is is a major concern for us. House Bill 319, which talks about the teacher shortages, it's going through its second reading, and there's several pieces to that, but it is to help with possibly paying teachers for student teaching, opening up, making it easier to hire a teacher, not with less qualifications, but anyone with a bachelor's degree would still be better than just a long-term sub if that's what we have to do. And I quote Legislator Tipton on that this morning. He said that on the news this morning. So House Bill 504, school funding, that's the one where we had talked previously about ADA to ADM. It's gone to Appropriation and Revenue Committee, so we'll see. The date on that to take place would start in 2024, though, July of 2024. So it's still, if it does pass, it would be a year away for us. And that's one of the concerns. That's one of the things that we're looking at when we talk about raises and even personnel at that point, is to see if we're going to be able to get any help from the legislators, because it's a statewide problem with our attendance, a decrease in SEEK, just a couple of different things that are going on right now that we're hoping to see some help from. You know, at one point we were promised that we would be, you guys have always had a school system police force. You've had an SRO in every school for 4, 5, 6 years, I guess. Well, they mandated that 2 years ago. And all last year, that's all we heard was they were going to start giving some funding for that. They've not talked one word about the funding yet, because they keep saying they're not going to open the budget. So if they don't open the budget, then that's out the window. That would have been another increase probably to our general fund of somewhere in the neighborhood of probably $250,000 to $300,000. Now, I do believe at some point they will do that. It just may not be this year. House Bill 174, that's a constitutional amendment, and you'll see something on the agenda tonight about that. That amendment would, right now the Constitution says that public school dollars cannot go to basically charter schools or private schools. There is an amendment that's been filed that would change the Constitution, would allow that to happen, would allow those dollars to follow students to private schools or charter schools. And a lot of charter schools are for profit. And I think when you do anything for profit, you may not have your students' best interest at heart. That's my opinion. The profit that we get from that is seeing success. But that bill's been filed, and still kind of in limbo on that. We have a legislative call every Friday morning at 9 o'clock, the superintendents do, and KASS actually has a lobbyist that's over there every day, and he kind of gives us an update, and he really can't tell us where that's at. But on the agenda tonight, you will see the resolution from the Committee for Better Education, and we did one of these. I thought you guys had done one prior to me getting here. However, Ms. Cooper went back and looked, and we had done it maybe my first fall here, because at that point, if you'll recall, they were fighting the monies following students to, am I correct on that, to the private schools, and they won. But with that, they also have, it's maybe $5 per student that they use for legal fees, and that would be a part of this resolution that we would approve. I'd have to look and see what the total is, but I know most districts, we're fighting for public dollars here. We're trying to keep our tax dollars in public schools. So I would recommend that we do that, move in that direction. Looking ahead, one other thing I do want to touch on is that, again, the beautiful weather. This is probably the most continuous instruction I can recall without an interruption of weather or of something that would have caused us not to be in the classroom teaching our kids. So I'm excited to see how this is going to transform itself into test scores this spring. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to you guys, and thank you.
Thank you. So next is,
If
Oh,
I
yes,
could,
go
real
ahead.
quick, if I could add, I just want to remind everyone as to when we, our general, and it's not a policy, but our practice is, if we have students that don't feel safe, feel like they need privacy, or students or staff either, then we certainly will offer any of those students a single stall restroom to use. We want everyone to be able to come in, feel safe, feel their privacy is being observed. So we certainly want to offer them the use of a single stall restroom. And that just goes back to House Bill 30, where, if the law is put in place, then we'll follow the law to the letter of it. I can assure you that's what we have to do. So we will follow the law. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
okay, thank you, Mr. Atkins. Next on the agenda is our good news report. I'm going to shake things up and start with Ms. Springate this month.
She always gets hers stolen
She
by
does
the time
always
everybody
get her
gets around. Yeah.
stolen, so.
I didn't prepare a long list because I was prepared for all the sports and all the activities to be covered before we got to me. But I did just want to share that February 27th to March 3rd is Public Schools Week, so that goes right along with the resolution that we're looking at later on in the agenda. And so hopefully folks can, have some celebrations and appreciate public schools this week.
Thank you, Mr. Brickler.
So I did want to recognize the high school choir had 8 students in the University of Louisville Honor Choir. They worked on 7 different pieces in 3 different languages. They got to perform with U of L students, as well as students from 32 high schools all across Kentucky. So that's a really good program. Also, just a shout out, the theater and choral departments are having their upcoming show, Big Fish, this week. So encourage everybody in the community to go see that and enjoy the show that they're putting on. Also, our athletic director and head football coach, Dennis Johnson, being named the 2023 Woodford County Distinguished Citizen of the Year by the Bluegrass Council Boy Scouts. Mr. Atkins already talked about the basketball team, so check that off. Did also want to acknowledge the art students at the high school participated in the Community Heart Show at Bluegrass Community Hospital, and congratulations to Felicia Mitchell for winning the $500 scholarship there. Also, the National Read Across America Day is this week, and there are many parents and community leaders that will be visiting schools and reading to students in the classroom, so thank you to everyone who has helped put that together. And my last thing, I was able to, since the last meeting, go to 3 different SBDM meetings throughout the district. I got to go to Simmons, Huntertown, and here at the high school. So I wanted to thank all the principals, the parents, and the other teachers that participate in those groups, letting me come and listen to them firsthand, what they have going on, what their needs are, what their successes are. So look forward to continuing to go and go to the other schools and then kind of doing a rotation. So that's all I got.
To jump in real quick, we're going to try. I talked to one of the coordinators of the Boy Scouts last night, and I told her I'd like to be able to invite everyone, all of our board, to Mr. Johnson's recognition, and she said that wouldn't be a problem at all. That she would get. She just needed a number, Ms. Cooper, so we'd know how much. She'd know how much food to have. Okay.
Okay. I've just got a few quick things here. The board members all attended our KSBA convention. It's a statewide convention. There were about 1,000, I think, what they said, board members from across the state. So it's really important, I think, for us because we don't get a lot of time that we can actually, all of us, sit down and communicate with one another about things that are happening in the state, things that are happening in the school districts. And what we really think about them. So it's a great opportunity for all of us to network together, network with other school boards and other people to see what's going on in the state and how what we're doing relates to what everybody else is doing. So thank you for the opportunity for us to go to that. This month, I also attended the Woodford Women in Business, and I know that's not the name now, but it's the Woodford Women in Business Group. Mr. Adkins and Mr. Shane, why can I not think of your last name right now? Smith. Apologies. Mr. Smith and Mr. Adkins gave a great presentation on the new high school. I think it's everything that everybody has seen in the past, but it was nice to get just sort of a pointed group of people together and go through those plans. So thank you for going out into the community and working with our other community organizations. Project graduation, I always try to mention something about project graduation. Has anybody seen the traveling toilet? My house was the first house to get it, thank you to one of our board members. So that's been kind of a fun, weird thing to do for a fundraiser, a little creativity there. Today is Dr. Bell's birthday, and there was some big celebrations that I saw going on. So a big happy birthday to Dr. Bell, and congratulations to our high school students who completed Dance Gold last weekend. They raised over $4,000 for pediatric cancer. And, you know, when I look at what our students, what I want my kids, what I hope our students grow into, it's empathetic people that want to help where they can. And I think that organization, that activity embodies everything I would want to see in our kids. So a really big congratulations to them. Thank you. Ms. Glass?
Okay. I just wanted to share, as it has been mentioned, that we were at the KSBA conference last weekend. I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Pritchard, who is the executive director of the JAG program, which is Jobs for America's Graduates. That's something that was new to Woodford County that the board approved last year. We have a certified teacher that does that at the high school. And just in conversation with him and telling him that I was a Woodford County board member, he had fabulous things to say about the program here and how we've started it in our first year and the work that Mrs. Kearns is doing, and just how he has not seen a program, a new district take on this program and really just run with it like we have. So I think sometimes as board members, we approve a lot of things and we don't always hear, and you don't always follow up and hear those things. So it was really great to hear that positive feedback. So I wanted to give a public kudos to Ms. Kearns and to everyone else that's worked hard to get that program here.
All right, I've got just a few things to mention. First, congratulations to our WCMS academic team for winning the District 40 title, and they advanced 6 students to the Governor's Cup state finals, so great job by that group of students. Woodford County also had several ladies compete at the Girls State Wrestling Tournament earlier this month, including Lacey Gilbert, who placed 3rd in her division, and Lauren Walton, who was a champion in her division. So they did an excellent job, and I want to say congratulations to those students. The Jacket Fish, our swim and dive team, had an incredible season and finished up at the state tournament this month. Woodford County competed extremely well and even had a regional record-breaking boys 400-yard freestyle relay team, which included Charlie Gatewood, Xavier Moore, Brady Miller, and Ben Carey. So congratulations to Coach Hicks and all of our great swimmers and divers on having a wonderful season. Earlier this month, we celebrated National School Counseling and Family Resource and Youth Services Coalition Week. I just wanted to recognize and thank all of our counselors and all of our Frisky staff who do so much for the students here in Woodford County. So thank you. And let's see, students at Northside Elementary celebrated Black History Month by visiting the Midway Museum for a walking field trip where they learned about Black history in Midway. So I think that's a great opportunity for those students, and I'm glad that they had that. And then my final good news piece is just that I happened to be at Huntertown Elementary a couple of weeks ago. I was dropping something off at the beginning of the day, and I was in the front office, and it was a student's birthday. So before I could speak with Ms. Kaiser, the principal, she said, "I'll be right with you." And she had a young student there, and it was her birthday. And so she was singing happy birthday to her. I mean, it looked like she made that little one feel like the most important person in that room. So I just thought that was so sweet. And I wanted to thank, our teachers and our principals and all of the folks that we have at our schools, because I know those things go on every day, but I just happened to be able to witness that, and I thought it was very touching. So that's all I've got.
I will say, I think I finally know how it feels to be at the end because a lot of mine got stolen, but that's
Sorry,
okay.
Miss Ash.
Before I get to the one that I have left, I do want to touch a little bit on how Dance Gold went, since I actually had the privilege of being able to be there and see it in real time. We got to meet a lot of the people from Dance Blue who manage it at the college level at UK, and they are just absolutely fantastic individuals. I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it the entire 6 hours. I don't know how they do it all 24, but they're absolutely amazing. And if you can, I would highly encourage that you all get involved in any way you can. I'm pretty sure you can still buy t-shirts from Miss Romine at the high school, and you can help contribute to an even bigger donation potentially. But other than that, Mr. WCHS, which is a prom fundraiser, is coming up very, very soon, this Friday on March 3rd. And it's where we have guys from the junior and senior grade levels. They go out in tuxes from Geno's, and basically whoever wins the competition, they get to have a little talent show. They get to have a little model runway walk type of moment, and it's very exciting. I've gotten the privilege to teach some of them their opening number dance. I can assure you it will be very entertaining. It is very, very funny. So if you would like, it is $5 a ticket, and it's supposed to really help us with prom funds. So that's basically all I've got.
Excellent. Thank you. Moving on in the agenda, item D is our instructional and equity report. Mr. Asher.
Tests, yep. Thank you. Good evening. On this 118th day of school, we've made our way due to good weather, as Mr. Atkins mentioned, making our way to up to 175. First thing on the instructional side is I'd like to update you on our Elliott Learning Walks, which we do 2 rounds of those each year. So over the course of February, we've been to all but one school at this point. And I'd like to go a little bit further in explaining those, that the Elliott contains 7 domains that we look at, and I want to highlight 3 of those that have been consistently highly observed and evident at each place, and that's both quantitative, as far as the rating that we give it, as well as qualitative, meaning the anecdotal notes and observations that we include. And I'll get to the CDIP here in just a minute. But the first of which is a supportive learning environment. So some key factors that go underneath supportive, just a positive learning environment in our classrooms, and students are supported not only by teachers but also their peers. Active learning, which we all know is important, and the most important aspect or subcategory under that domain is that students are actively engaged. And then finally, well-managed learning, which included in there would be respectful interactions, and it's very evident that behavioral and learning expectations are in place. So those 3 elements are very high on our radar, and if you have those things, you have the supportive learning, you have active learning, and you have well-managed learning, that's successful instruction. So we're very pleased in what we've seen in our schools thus far. I'll now take you here for our CDIP update. Josh, if we could shrink it maybe. So we did go through for CDIP committee. We had a couple meetings and a couple avenues for feedback within that. And one main area, I know it's going to be small there. And also, let me say, I apologize, it didn't get posted until Friday, but that's only because we had a meeting last Wednesday, wanted to give time for more feedback. After reviewing great Q&A among the team, the major activity that we added was under this post-secondary readiness. It would be the last in that table there, Josh, which is related to our Purpose and Action initiative, which I know you've probably heard of and seen in the news, so to speak, because of the success we've had thus far. But ultimately, what we're looking for there is WCHS students, with the help of partnering organizations, which in this case is Parker Hannafin, will design and create a manufacturing prototype work cell that will allow individuals with a range of disabilities the opportunity for further careers. So that obviously relates to post-secondary readiness, and that was the one major activity that we updated and added from the original draft. Also, what was added, and this would go through the whole document as appropriate, is not only the funding source, but the amount. And I will say that some of those are approximates because we're not sure of the scope of the work yet. These might be initiatives that have just started or haven't started, so a lot of those are put as approximates. So the CDIP will be, it's on, as you probably know, on the agenda a little bit later for your approval, but that is the 2 major elements of instructional if you have any questions.
thank you so much for adding the funding sources and the approximate allocations. I think that's just so valuable and so good to have, so thank you.
You're welcome. All right, moving on to the equity updates. Just had our equity team meeting tonight. I'd like to point out, and you probably saw a post about this, the diversity assemblies that happened early February at both the high school and middle school that were organized by staff. Wonderful events and some great content covered there. Also, the word that I keep using for our goal this year with equity is building capacity at the school level. While we've had this district level leadership team, it doesn't take true action until it gets down into our schools, and we need to build our capacity for that leadership. And so currently the school level teams are meeting to review the results of that, what we call the DEI reviews that the district level team conducted, and they're just planning next steps from that. I'm also pleased to announce that WEF, Woodford Educational Endowment Foundation, they're supporting the efforts financially, so those school level teams can complete mini grants of up to $1,000 of whether it be books, resources, visuals, things along those lines that they want to add to their school and increase their level of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Also, speaking of capacity, and I just found this out this evening, Ms. Glass was in on the meeting, she's a member of the team, just building student capacity here at the high school. The high school members of their team, adult members, I should say, took it upon themselves through Hive, to start meeting with the student members. It was 3 at first, because we have 3 designated student members to our equity team. The next week it was 15. And so they've had 3 of these week in and week out, and they're just talking about issues, getting student feedback. They had them complete a Google survey. This most recently, I think even today perhaps they met, that they reviewed those results and how can we solve these issues. So I was really proud of again, that capacity that's being built there. So kudos to those high school staff members that are facilitating that. Sir?
Can we see those results too, or is that just in that?
I haven't even seen them. That may be something, quite honestly, maybe they want to keep among that group.
Okay.
I'm going to join. I asked them to invite me the next time. I think they're going to start going to an every other week, but I could maybe summarize and share those with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then finally, and I know, and I'm going to read a prepared statement. This is actually something I've shared with all of you board members in relation to critical race theory. I shared it with our previous board. I shared it with you as our 2 new members, and just to provide some clarification to that, because I know I've gotten some emails. I know that you have. This was something we talked about with our onboarding. But this is actually from the National School Board Association. And forgive me, this is a little long, but I need to go through it all. So first off, what is critical race theory? Critical race theory, or CRT, is a framework of legal and academic topics that examine social, cultural, and legal issues related to race and racism. It is primarily used in university-level courses. I repeat, it is primarily used in university-level courses. CRT says that race is not biological, but a socially constructed idea. Originating in the 1970s, CRT was first used to help law students think critically about the impact of historical and present-day racism on the legal system. In the 90s, some colleges of education also started incorporating CRT into their coursework to help aspiring school administrators and teachers better understand inequities in the context of education. So 2 highlights from there is, again, university level, and this originated in the 70s. One thing that I think is very important, why I'm choosing to share this right now, is the next heading talks about CRT is not educational equity. CRT and educational equity are not the same and shouldn't be used interchangeably. The term critical race theory is being inaccurately used by some to encompass a wide range of topics, including educational equity, social emotional learning, cultural awareness, and restorative justice practices. It is also being used to describe discussions of racism in classroom instruction. Working toward student achievement and excellent outcomes for all students is the essential work of schools. Approaches to equity will be different in every district, but the goal is the same: excellent outcomes for all students. And then finally, educational equity means that students have access to the resources they need in their education, regardless of their race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, ethnicity, language, religion, or family background. And so again, this is a major hot topic in headlines, I know, and as I said, you receive many questions on it, and it often gets misconstrued. But this is the best resource I've found. I encourage you to look up that email that I sent you, and this is how we treat it. It is not within our standards. It's been asked if it's in our curriculum. It is not in our standards and therefore not in our curriculum. Does that mean, that does not mean, as it's said in here, that issues of racism certainly are discussed and are part of our history. But to say CRT, as described here, is not part of our curriculum. I not only am I aware of that because I showed you where our curriculum maps are and things like that, but also just did a poll among our veteran teachers, our department leads, particularly in social studies and ELA, which is where this topic would likely come up, and all approach it the same way, what I mentioned here, and again, not being part of our standards nor part of our curriculum. So I just wanted to clarify there. I know that I've shared it with you, but we have never talked about it publicly, so I hope that answers some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Asher, because I know I've had several questions from folks throughout the community. I think, like you said, it's something that we see and hear in the news a lot, and it's important just to sort of close the loop and let folks know we do or we don't, and here's what we are doing. So I appreciate that feedback.
You're welcome. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Asher before we let him go? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick before we move on, Parker Hannafin has invited us back next year for another round with the sale building, so that's exciting. And it'll be a different, not a completely, totally different group of students, but it'll be different students to make up the team, so it's exciting. That's
Great.
a real life problem that they get to solve or help solve.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the high school update. So we'll call Mr. Ratliff and Miss Lemire up. I'm struggling tonight, folks. I am sorry.
Good evening. So we're in good shape. This video is pretty short. It was taken this morning, and if anybody went outside, it wasn't the best day to fly a drone. So we tried to capture the significant areas of change. As you can see, almost all footers and stem walls are complete in what we're calling Building Wing C. The walls you see are the first 3 runs of CMU, or concrete masonry units. They are, I'm going to say after today, we're roughly 90% complete in Area C. We originally anticipated in coming out of this wing and starting back here, we've run into some clay seam voids in the bedrock, which we'll be discussing later on. So we had to kind of adapt and overcome. We started our footers going down Area F, and we'll eventually make our way back to E, and hopefully at that point have these issues resolved. If you want to hit play, I'm sure you can tell driving by the site now that you can actually see things going on. There's 2 reasons for that. We came 4 foot up in this hole with clay fill. So once we finally got some dry weather this month, that was completed very quickly. And then this area in the front, which is the front parking and the drive-through loop, they've taken it down to grade, which positive you don't care. This is our main area of focus right now as far as site work goes. We're trying to get this parking lot established for employee parking and for laydown area. We have established some laydown area over here, but we're going to need more in a short amount of time. So,
Can you orient me to where that is again?
so this is our office trailer here. This is,
Oh, okay.
so this would be the front of the building. This is the storm shelter. This is the auditorium. This is the gym.
And the middle school is across, we're looking straight across at
Yeah,
the middle
right in that
school.
corner.
Got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, got it. Thank you.
So as we'd mentioned before, as far as schedule goes, the blasting took longer than we anticipated and that we hoped for, which ultimately leads to the footers starting later than we had hoped for. But we actually coordinated with the contractors and was able to start CMU installation earlier before the slab gets poured. So that made up some good time for us, and also the weather's been a big advantage. So right now, substantial completion contractually completion is October 27th of '24, and we are tracking for substantial completion September 19th of '24. So again, I don't want anybody to get confused when I say we're not where we want to be, that we're very aggressive in the front end. There's gonna be a lot of rain, there's gonna be weather delays, manpower sometimes becomes a problem. So we overshoot and hope for perfection, and that gives us some buffer when we run into things like these clay seams and different things, so. Any questions?
I don't think so.
All right,
Thank you, Mr. Rattler.
thank you.
I think the next item with the high school would be the design of the alternate, I guess is the right word, for the bathroom design.
Hello. So I believe there's going to be an image. All right. So last time we spoke, we talked about what it would be to create bathrooms that were individual stalls for everybody to use and what that would look like. So this is kind of the sketch that we did. On the left is the restrooms that you have. And I'm probably going to need the microphone because you all can speak into that.
It's,
So these are the restrooms that are designed, so you can see that we had, the boys' gang and the girls' gang, and then an individual, used by anybody toilet here. One thing that I said last time is that I didn't know if there were other staff restrooms other than these that were near the gang toilet. There are actually 2 in the administration area that are for staff and faculty only. So there were a couple more that I didn't realize were in the plan when I saw them. So the way we looked at this is how can we then make these all private rooms? So we had to kind of push the toilets out so that we were creating a big open area so you could stand here and see into the alcove. And then we created 4 toilets on one side and 3 on the other, so that we have handicap toilet here, a required accessible toilet. This is it's another kind of accessibility that we have to have when we have more than 6 toilets, and the name's not coming to me right now. And then we had to make sure that we met plumbing code in certain ways. So for example, no matter what in plumbing code, we have to have 3 urinals in this bank of toilets. So we have 1 in the handicap stall and then 2 kind of dispersed, and that actually gives us the 3 urinals we needed and actually more water closets, toilets than we needed per plumbing code by doing this. So that's how it kind of lays out, and we still then have 1 kind of off of the corridor for, just additional flexibility.
How about space? Is it the same, different square footage?
It is exactly in the same square footage. So these walls here are these walls right here. So it fit exactly in that same square footage.
Okay.
And this would be for all the bathrooms in the building, all the,
That would be your choice.
okay.
I think we might have,
Our estimate that we've put together for the budgetary purposes to see if you all want to move forward would only include the 2 classroom wing upstairs restrooms, and then the ganged restrooms near the gym, at the gym corridor area. With the point we're at, it would be a delay for the project if we looked at changing the downstairs bathrooms at the 2 classroom wings.
How much of a delay are you thinking?
It'd be really impossible for me to say. That would take some discussions, but they would have to issue an official PR, the actual construction drawings for that design, and then we would have a couple weeks to get pricing on it, and then the board would have to approve it.
So it would be the same process if you do upstairs And if you do upstairs and downstairs, it would be the same timeline, same process?
No, the underslab plumbing is currently going in the ground. We've got some time before the second floor plumbing is installed. So, expecting that this moves along by the next couple of months, it wouldn't be an issue for the second floor. But even if we moved tomorrow on this, it would hold up the C-wing because that's where we're currently running underslab plumbing.
You don't have an estimate of how long that would hold the project out?
But it would be
A
rework
month.
of work that's been done already.
If we didn't issue a stop work order in the next couple of days, it would, yes. They are making their way down from like the ag shop area towards those restrooms now.
And stop work means stop on everything or stop in that area?
We would have to identify areas that, it's a web, like the plumbing. It's not just where those bathrooms are located. They connect and tie in with the slope. So again, that's a really hard question for me. My understanding and the direction was to look at the restrooms that wouldn't be affected because it would be substantial cost.
And how many bathrooms are gonna be downstairs and upstairs? So like, what's the number we're talking about that are already basically set versus what we can still adjust?
So it would be 3 that are set and 3 that are not, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah, that's
of the
right.
gang restrooms.
So in the classroom wings, there are upstairs and downstairs, and there's 2 of them. Each wing has this restroom layout. So that's 4 there, and then there's a gang toilet by the gymnasium, and then there's another set that's in the storm shelter. So basically, we would be leaving 3 as they're configured in the drawings and modifying 3. So that would give you that
Okay.
flexibility
when-
and that change.
So when we're looking at the cost adjustment that you're probably gonna talk about here in a minute, that's gonna be for 3 bathrooms.
Yes.
So that's what we need.
3 sets.
3 sets, right?
Yep.
3 sets of restrooms.
Yep.
That are all upstairs.
That are all upstairs.
Correct.
No,
The-
2,
Or by the gym. One's by
Gymnasium
the
would be
gym,
on the ground
2
floor. So
upstairs.
those- that's a little bit
Right.
further behind in schedule, and that is on the ground floor.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we would have a set of these adjusted ones if we approve it on the lower level.
yes.
Just 3 of them on the lower level would stay, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And in both plans, it's,
The gym and the cafeteria, that's the same set of restrooms.
Would be by the cafeteria as well? Oh, okay.
Well, the gang restrooms that are by the gymnasium are the ones that are also by the cafeteria, so that's one set.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay.
in both spaces have shared sink space, right? Both plans, if I'm looking like,
So, when they were separated, they had the sinks on the outer wall here.
Okay.
And in this, we're putting them all here, so they are shared.
okay, thank you.
And again, to be clear, this meets all regulations, requirements for number of seats.
It meets all regulations for number of plumbing fixtures. There is a plumbing code in the books that has been the plumbing code forever, and that is, we will need to label these as for the gender they are anticipated to be used for, so that they can count them. So regardless of, you know, how you use them, and if they're shared, they're still gonna be labeled male or female, even as the gang toilets. That's a code thing that we can't get out of. We've tried to talk through that with them.
And spaces inside of the school are determined by the site-based council, so they can use them as they see fit.
So when you say that they would need to be labeled and identified, would it, for those that are the single stalls, the ones that have been redesigned, would you just have a male and female sign outside of them? Is that what you're talking about?
They say that each stall has to be labeled male or female to the point where you get to the required by code. So 4 of these would have to be labeled female, the ones with the urinals would have to be labeled male. And again, how you use them, I'm just saying that by code, I have to label them something. There is no way in the Kentucky Plumbing Code to label them gender neutral unless they are up and above the number of toilets you need.
And we can decide the label that goes on there, correct?
When you get approval
Yeah.
to occupy, they're gonna have to say boy and girl.
Yep.
After
think-
that,
Right.
Isn't that what you just said, Mr. Atkins? The
Yeah.
SBDM would decide
Yeah.
at each school, they decide how they are labeled after they're approved.
I can
in the
have no
appropriate
comment.
way.
Oh, right, understood. Any other questions on the design aspect?
So the entrance is down here at the bottom where the sinks are?
yeah, this is the entrance. So this is a large custodial closet, and then there's one restroom here that you can enter from the corridor, but this is the main entrance into that suite of toilets.
I think this is something that we would want to hear some feedback from students and from staff and from the teachers and folks that are going to be impacted in using it. You know, is this something that would be helpful and beneficial for them? You know, it wouldn't be all of the restrooms at the high school, so, you know, I don't know if it would help in cases where you have folks that would like a little bit more privacy. So I think I would love to have that feedback, and I'd also like to hear from the school safety committee, the school resource officers, and, you know, what are some things that maybe we haven't thought about or that we need to think about before any kind of change would take place.
I agree, and I think it's more than just, quite frankly, the gender. I think there's a lot of questions, and I think Mr. Chenoweth and Mr. Atkins brought up a slew of things that we probably hadn't considered as far as the restroom usage goes, or that space goes. So I do agree. I do think one really important aspect to it is the estimated cost. So I think that needs to be weighed as well. Ms. Glass, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, you didn't, I'm sorry. I was gonna say cost. That was gonna be my next question.
So, after discussions with contractors and each bid package holder that this affects, the estimate we came up with, and we're trying to stay on the safe side here because we're not, you know, these are not final drawings. There will be more detail to the drawings. So, the estimate we came up with for the 3 sets of restrooms would be $317,000, and that includes all construction costs, soft costs. That would be the grand total.
So that's above and beyond what is currently budgeted or projected for this project, an
Yeah.
additional 317.
Yeah, that would be the cost of this
That would
change.
come out of the contingency fund.
Yeah.
And from a timing perspective, I know we had said we have a little bit of time, but we don't want to push up against that timing to delay the project overall. What would your timing of, final yay or nay be?
we would need to have some discussions. One thing to understand here on timing is we've sequenced this job per building area. So contractors order the material that way. They have it show up to site and stock that way. It plays into a lot when we make a change like that. It's not like there's not an area of building we can't move to, but it's not as easy as us just moving there, I would need them to kind of provide a timeline if you gave the yay or nay on construction drawings, and then we would need a week or two for pricing, and then whether it wait till the board meeting or, so it's just a little complicated to answer right now, but I could get you a goal date by the end of tomorrow.
And I think if we could understand what the risks are from, say, a supply chain perspective, material availability, labor perspective, all of that would be helpful. as
Okay.
well.
That's the reason.
Yeah.
Explained as why they're doing it in.
Sort of yes, right. Right. Okay. Anything else we need to consider or ask on this topic?
I have a question that's not related to the bathroom redesign, but it's about the new high school. It's
Yes.
just a,
Well, yep, we can move on to that if nobody else has another Question on the bathroom?
Well, I have some more about the bathroom too, so maybe I should just
Go
go with
ahead.
that. Sorry, I'm a little bit all over the place, but I think, you know, with the restroom design, you know, we've heard from folks about restroom usage, you know, and what is allowed. Would we consider a policy? What are we doing? What are, you know, we've talked about what are other counties doing in other school districts, and something that I'm interested in, and when we think about it in terms of safety, like you just mentioned, and like you've mentioned, Mr. Adkins, I wonder what your all's thoughts are, and this is me just kind of throwing something out there, but what about having some kind of a work group or a group of folks that would come together, and you could have parents, you could have students, you could have administrators, teachers, anybody that would be impacted, to talk about safety as it relates to restroom use. And it could include all of the topics that we heard at our last board meeting. It could go for other things that concern us around restroom usage, like vaping and fights and all of those kinds of things that can happen in those areas. I wonder if that would be something that's beneficial, because I always feel like that there have to be some sort of creative solutions. I want to make sure that every student in our schools feels safe, like we all do. And I sometimes think that we need to look outside of ourselves and ask folks within the community and those that are impacted kind of what their ideas are, because I certainly don't know everything. I don't know the answers to everything, but I think we can get to a better place if we include other people. So I wanted to see sort of what everyone's thoughts were around that, and if that's something that we could do to address some of the concerns that we're hearing today in this building, and then, you know, it would impact at the new high school as well.
I think,
Go ahead.
I think it's a really good point, because we have spent a lot of time and we have heard the most with the gender issue, but I think when you do think about bathroom safety, you need to have a bigger scope. And there's a lot more, probably more frequent, probably, you know, more things to think about, like the fighting and the vaping and drug use and sexual misconduct and a lot of other things besides just who's going in and out. So I do think we need to look at it with a wider lens than just focusing on one specific aspect. I have heard that there are benefits to this, the redesign when it comes to overall safety, and that there's more view, that, you know, someone can monitor that restroom much easier. So I do think that it makes sense, and getting more input from other individuals in the schools, out of the schools, people from different communities that can give that input. I think it could be a very valid and useful exercise to go through.
That kind of makes sense too. I mean, just about the mixed restroom area wouldn't be as much violence. You know how the boys are, they're shoving, pushing, which leads to foolishness. I just wonder. And chime in.
I'm not against having any kind of discussion. I think anytime it's a good discussion. But I think it's something we have to remember if we're going to have a discussion of any type of public discussion. I am absolutely against any kind of discussion that's going to pit groups of students against each other.
I could not agree more on that.
I think all of us have seen, we have heard very vile comments, even sitting in some of our meetings. The things that I have seen on social media just in last week that have been very vile towards groups of our students, members of our staff. I know what I got into. It doesn't hurt my feelings, but it hurts my feelings for our students. And I think we have to think about that. So if we want to have these discussions, we need to make sure that we are inviting mature adults that can have these discussions, and mature adults that can remember that we are all elected to serve our children. And we have to remember, with our behavior and with our words and our actions, that we have to keep them at the forefront of our minds. I think our board has done a good job of trying to remember that. It's been disappointing, some of the things I've seen and heard from our public, and that's disheartening. And I think we have to remember that we're here to make the best decisions for all of our children. So if we have those discussions and we have those hard discussions, we have to remember that we are mature adults working for kids.
That's very well said, and I couldn't agree more with that. and it's been weighing on my mind since our last meeting as well. And I think our biggest obligation is making sure that all of our kids are safe, all of our kids are accepted and respected, and we don't have a small group of very loud people that are intimidating and hurting an already vulnerable part of our community. And so I agree with everything everybody has said about that.
And in regards to the idea of creating a counselor committee or discussion group of some sort that would involve parents, administrators, students, or something like that, I do know a very good handful of students that are very professional with ideas like this and can absolutely talk about it while being professional, mature about it, while still bringing a diverse group of ideas to the table that are from different perspectives and that kind of thing. So if you all would like an email list of any kind, I can absolutely talk to some of those people. They've served on boards like this in the past, like the calendar committee. I know some of them are on. So if that's something that you all are interested in or want to move forward with, let me know, and I will absolutely give you all a head start on it.
Is this something that we should consider not hosting ourselves? I feel like it can get very emotional very quickly. We live here, we love everybody in this community. Is there a way, Mr. Adkins, I don't know if maybe from the school safety commissions, if there's something or somebody there that could help us with that?
Can you reach out to John Akers or Dan Orman tomorrow, Garrett, and see if they would offer us some sort of service like that? Or maybe KSBA may host something for us as well.
And I also want to point out, that's a great point, Ms. McKell. We did, just within the past few months, host a county-wide elected official safety forum. And there were 0 questions about any kind of bathroom safety, and it was very, very sparsely attended. So I do want to keep that in mind as well. You know, we did have an opportunity for our community to come together with any safety concerns, and we had 2 public comments. So I do want to just remind
That's a good
that we
point.
have, this isn't some, safety has been a forefront for our district for a good amount of time.
Okay.
With those folks tomorrow, we can hold in, and I'll get the information, whatever Garrett finds out.
So I think this is probably something that we don't want to wait until the next meeting to try to move forward with.
Remember, we have our data meeting on the 7th.
On the 7th?
Incorporate
Yeah, that's what, within a week, right? That's next week?
next Tuesday.
I guess I would just suggest we go ahead and add that to the data meeting and put that on the agenda so that the newspaper can get the word out that that's something that we're gonna, be scheduling, and that, we can have that on for discussion and for a vote once you bring us back the information, if that's possible.
If that's enough time to, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and we wouldn't have the actual meeting that night. We would just be having a vote to decide if that's something we want to move forward with once we get the information. And the Pritchard Committee is also hosts community forums and groups and different kinds of things, and I think would be a really excellent resource and possibility too. I think the main thing is, we always want to be, open to our community and open for our students and our staff, and to be able to have discussions. And I think that anybody that's hosting the forum could kind of lay down the rules and the expectations for behavior kind of prior to that. I don't know that us having a open discussion and asking for input is going to cause necessarily any ugliness. I think really just letting people be heard is a good thing. I don't know that could be a bad thing ever. But I definitely think just kind of having whoever does that have some experience with that and be able to lay out the expectations, immediately is just a really good idea. So thank you for that idea, Ms. McCowan.
What about possibly reaching out to KASC as well? See if they may offer some sort of capability to host this forum, or we'd have it in one of our facilities, but just have them facilitate that. Okay, thank you.
So one other thing, since you're going to be, Mr. Atkins, you're going to be kind of holding some of this. So Hannah, you mentioned emailing some students. Would you mind sending that to Mr. Atkins
Oh, yes, absolutely.
so that he can
100%.
compile some of that together? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments on the restrooms? Okay. One final thing, and thank you, Ms. Lemire, thank you, Mr. Ratliff. One final thing I wanted to discuss regarding the high school was the upkeep of the website. So it's kind of with the transition, I think, between Mr. Martello and Mr. Smith and just school and life in general, I think the update of that website has kind of fallen off track. So I wanted to get a quick sort of go around. I think Dr. Rayburn, you'll be taking over, likely your group at least, updating that website, and just wanted to kind of get a quick hear from everybody on types of items that we might want to see included and timing of updates so that we can get that information out.
Yeah, so part of our discussion has been that website is currently hosted outside of our district website, which in my opinion, as the CIO, I think that all of our district websites should be one instead of multiple different ones. So my first proposal as I'm looking for this is to remove that website altogether and start over and have just an updated website page on our district website that updates the community on current projects that we're working on, but also links out to the past documents that are currently on there so that we can still have them and have those as a resource, but have it moving forward be just on our website instead of it's like new woodfordhighschool.com or something like that. Mainly because in the past our website was woodfordschools.org, and then we lost that domain and now it's woodford.kyschools.us, and a lot of those external websites never got updated. So this is a way to keep us all in one format, is to keep it on our current website so that we're not having to figure out, we've had some loss of staff members that have moved on to other places that had access to this website that no longer have access to it. So I don't think it's financially responsible of us to keep that website up if we can just put it on our own website.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I was going to ask, we're paying for that website right now? That
Correct.
We're not really using or updating? So,
Correct.
Okay.
We're paying a yearly $175 for the domain hosting for using Weebly. And that would stop before, at the end of this year.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that's a great idea. And two, one of the questions that I get a lot, and I'm not sure what the answer is like the capacity for the new high school. So I hope we can include just some facts. I know that there's a fact sheet, but I don't think it ever included what the capacity is. And I know that that's a question that's asked a lot just because there's tons of development going on in Woodford County and Versailles, and I never quite know what that figure is. So that would be so helpful.
Sure. On the current website, I do know that there are some factual seating capacities in the gym and the auditorium. Those do have that, but I think it would be smart to have, how many classrooms we're going to have, what the average seating is going to be for there, especially with our CTE classes. Just those basic, like you said, rundown quick facts. A quick fact sheet would be acceptable as well. I also think as long as Trace Creek is okay with it to use your drone footage to put on the website, would that be okay? Okay.
And how often could we get that updated?
Well, because it's our own website, we can update it as frequent as we need to. So anytime we get updated footage every month, we can put that on the website. Where I came from in my previous district, every month there was an updated PowerPoint presentation that went on the district facilities plan that updated the progress of all of their buildings that they were building. So I think that's something similar that we need to do here. Just this is our January update. This is where we're currently at. This is our percentage to completion type of thing. So we probably can get with Mr. Smith and the architect and them to get just a percentage of, those numbers are approximate, but just so the community knows what percentage are we on completion. And I know there is a timeline as well that we can include too.
We could also have Ms. Bailey stop by once a week and grab some quick pictures and get them up once a week, really, if we needed to.
Yeah, Miss Bailey and I are going to be drone pilots soon, so.
I know you've been working on that, so yeah.
Yeah.
How long do you think it would take to get an updated site running, to shut off the old one and start a new one and get it to where you're comfortable with it?
I would need at least a week just to get the information up there, provided I have a fact sheet that we were needing as far as the capacity. I can get that up in a week. Our school website has a basic template already, so it's not like we're adding a whole new redesign of where you would go with the website as it is. It's basically just, a page on our current website that we would be adding, so it's not like we're recreating or redesigning anything.
That would be so, so, so wonderful. And then also, I don't know if it's possible, but to just have, not like a Facebook, social media kind of thing on it, but just some kind of thing where folks could click and ask you a question or something like that. If they don't find something or they have suggestions or they'd like to see something, then they could maybe communicate that way, so that it's, always responsive.
Sure.
almost.
We
Can it be
can,
linked to Parent Square?
we can link to Parent Square. Parent Square is an internal communication tool, so it would be hard to link those two together because one's an external outward facing, one's an internal.
And if you didn't have an account?
Correct. So it might be a little confusing, but we can for sure put a
Question button.
yeah, that they can send an email to somebody to ask questions about that we can forward to whomever needs to answer those questions.
That sounds great. Again, I think the more information we can share, the better, and if we can be clear about, what's going on, how much things are costing, if we're ahead of schedule, behind schedule, if we're, having events or any of that kind of stuff, that would be wonderful to have all of that.
Because this doesn't require a board agenda item, I can put something together on the 7th and just show you a mock-up, just so you all can see. That would not be a hard thing to do.
That'd be great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other topics on the new high school? Thank you, Mr. Rayburn. Thank you, Ms. Lemire. Thank you, Mr. Ratliff. We will move on to item 6, which is opportunity for audience public comment. We have nothing emailed in. We have one person signed up, and that's Mr. David Graves.
How y'all doing today? That thing will whip you. Well, one thing, I've had some texts while I've been sitting here. Staff wants some more bathrooms. Because believe it or not, we do go to the bathroom periodically. And don't want to have to run to the other side of the building to do it. So I think it was me texts I was getting. I was like, better talk about that. So more bathrooms, work it in. Okay, y'all, I'm David Graves. I'm president of WCEA here in Woodford County, kind of Woodford County version of KEA. And it's budget time of the year, and I'm here to talk about we're needing some raises. I've been getting all kinds of, I'm sure you all have been getting all kinds of emails about it. We talked to Mr. Atkins earlier last week, and he was very positive with us about some raises. Because you all, I'll be honest with you, we're falling behind districts around us. I've got some documents if you want me to email them to you about pay scales in other districts. Like for example, I know you all have been hearing this for years. You can't compete with Fayette County, but I tell you, you are. Especially us being right next door. This year I have from a really good source, they're getting a 5% across the board, which is like $2.3 million for a 1% raise for them, from what I was told. And the 2 years prior to that, they also got a 5% raise over those 2 years, a 2 and a 3%. So in 3 years, they've gone up 10%. And I do appreciate the raises y'all gave us, because it does help. These in my retirement years kind of get down towards the end. But if, like Mr. Atkins told us at the meeting the other day, if we don't give raises, people are going to leave here. And to be honest with you, the best people are going to leave here and go to Fayette County to help those retirement years. Let's see. We were told for the past couple of years that building this new high school wasn't going to affect our raises. But there's still a lot of teachers, staff in general that are very fearful of that. It's still happening. And I hear it all the time. And I'm sure you all have been to Kroger's here lately. You can't get what you used to get. I don't know how many of y'all rent, but houses for rent are about, I've seen a lot for $1,200 a month. That's more than my house payment, just to rent. Saw one on Facebook a second ago, which surprised me, is at $2,500 for the month for a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. And my jaw dropped. And I don't know if y'all noticed or not, but the water prices are going up. They're proud of their water around here. And I don't know what it costs the school system for water. I wouldn't even want to see the bill. But cost of living here has gone up, as it is everywhere else. But for some reason in Woodford County, things seem to be golden, I guess. And cost of living in Versailles is tough for a teacher. Me personally, I think I make a fairly decent wage here. This is my 25th year. I don't see how someone that's emergency certified to teach 2 or 3 doors down from me, I don't see how they can afford to live, let alone some other people that are being paid less than me. Because I'll be honest, I'm making month to month. It's tough. Cost of living in Versailles is a lot. I've lived here since I was 4 years old. We keep talking about the gold standard here and kids winning. If these better teachers leave, it's the teaching level, I believe, will go downhill in the future. I mean, I don't know how many emergency certified people we have, and they're working on their way towards getting certification, but I don't see how they can really, like I said, I can't see how they can afford to live. Our benefits are getting less and less from the state. I remember when I first started working at the jail here many years ago, I had a $5 copay and $5 payment on prescriptions. Now it's a whole lot more. I owe a lot of doctor bills right now, just for my hand surgery. I wish I hadn't had now, because it costs me too much. Let's see. I got a little list here, I'm sorry. Make sure I follow everything. I think that's about it. I think I covered all my little bullets. I don't know if I mentioned, though, teachers do need to go to the bathroom, though. Especially as you get older. Any questions? I know y'all technically can't speak or anything, I guess, from what I've been told, but got any questions from me for teachers?
None.
Well, we're here because we love it.
Thank you for coming and speaking. I know we don't typically, respond back, and so I'm not going to respond back to you other than thank you for coming and speaking and bringing it to our attention, because I know that's, it's a hard thing to do. I guess I would just ask Mr. Atkins and the board if we would consider planning some sort of a work session to discuss some of the issues that Mr. Graves has raised about as far as, salaries in counties kind of surrounding, salaries in districts, different kinds of raises, what different things would cost, salary schedules, just all of those kinds of things. I think that would be a very valuable thing for us to do.
Oh, your microphone.
Our plan was to have a couple of options for you guys next month. We're really wanting to see what legislation does with finances first. But I do have Mr. Smith working on 3 different options of things to look at. We met for approximately 3 hours today as department heads to look at our salary schedule as a whole. Not in the raise aspect, but in trying to draw it closer to reward folks that get certifications or more education. Because we have that in place for our certified folks. It's our classified folks that really don't have that opportunity. So we spent about 3 hours today going through everything on the salary schedule, looking at what we could do to try to draw us closer to some of the districts around us. Now, there is a district closely related to us that I can tell you exactly where we rank in the state. We rank 38th. And they have posted not just our salary where we rank, but several districts around them, I guess as a recruiting tool. I think they're 27th or 28th in the state. So they're saying, come to us, we can pay you more. And they're not ashamed to put our names out there. I'm not sure that I would have gone that route.
The one
That
thing
has
that
happened.
I would ask when we do this, we look at the whole compensation that we're offering. So I think the points about health insurance contributions, things like that, make a difference. We offer EAP and whatever other things that we offer as a sort of total compensation package, trainings that we send that other schools and the other districts may not encourage, all of the stuff that we encourage. So I think it's a great idea. I think it's really important that we look at it. And I also think it's really important that we don't look at it as a one number fits all from a everybody gets this. I think you need to look at different groups and try to figure something out that way as well.
Yep, I would agree. So we're hoping to bring at least some options for you guys to think about next month, along with options for the salary schedule. We have a planning meeting with a group that offers, it wouldn't be a new certification, but it would be a rank change, which would mean raises for our certified staff, our younger certified staff that may not have reached those rank changes yet. And one of the beauties is the way it's set up is it would allow the district to help pay for that. And if we pay for it over a 5-year time frame, that means we get to keep that staff member for 5 years. So it's a retainment piece as well.
Is there a way to look at our salary schedule? It's a little confusing to me, our salary schedule. It's got the rank, it's got the number of years, and I would really like to understand who we have at each one of the, not just 50 rank 1 teachers, but at each one of those, because those buckets can be pretty large from 0 to whatever it goes up to.
25, I think.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, I appreciate the discussion tonight, but I really do think that it's worthy. There's enough different aspects and different things kind of going on of having a special work session just to kind of talk about this and to talk about different ways to look at raises and to look at the salary schedules and to do all that kind of stuff. We've done it in the past, and there's been quite a bit of information presented, and it also allows teachers and folks notice that we're going to be doing this work session just about this on this day at this time, so that they can come and speak and we can kind of go over, because I think it's bigger than just, here's a couple of options. It's kind of bigger than that. Like, there's a lot more information. I think that it sounds like we can be discussing.
We can address it any way you guys want to address it.
I think I agree with Ms. Springate on having that, because I think after we have the options from you and we know legislation, like you said, I don't think we should have the work meeting before we have the options that you and Mr. Smith come up with, or that we know a little bit more legislation. But I think if you get that information to us and we have that to absorb, and then like Ms. Springate said, do a work session to really dig into that and to come up with other options, because I know at KSBA this weekend, I sat through some really good salary and benefit courses that I got to learn about. And I'll be honest, I didn't know all of the different parts of the compensation and state versus federal funding. And, there's a lot that goes into it that most people don't know about. And so I really like the idea of a work session after we have some more information from you to come forward and share some ideas. So
Sure.
I would love to do that.
And we can kind of all email in, like, this is something I'm interested in. Could you, give us a listing of, how we rank first year, how we rank 5th year, how we rank 20th year, because it's going to be different. I don't even know how you could do, a ranking. And then the percentage of,
I think that
the general
ranking
fund that we're spending on.
was probably
staff
done
and
but for an
salaries.
average.
Yeah.
The 38th, I think, was.
Yeah, just all of those kinds of things I think would be very, very, very helpful. Because without data, we really are just kind of voting based on emotion or what we're hearing. So I think to have that data and that information, and we had a really, really good session about that, that Ms. Smith did with Mr. Hawkins a few years back, and there was just a lot of information in there, because honestly, I still have no clue sometimes about certain staff things that you guys know. And I know at some point we've had staff come and say, can we, do something different on these paychecks so we can understand where things are coming out and what these are. And the paycheck, you can't even really read it and understand what it says. And so that's something I think, it could be just a broader discussion about all those kinds of things.
So can we set a time frame? I would like to not let this bleed into, another meeting or have a work session in 6 weeks or something like that. Can we agree that within the next 2 weeks, we will all get our requests to Mr. Atkins so that they can start compiling that information that they can then get back out to us to review and try to be a little efficient about
We sure can.
about all of that.
Great
So
idea.
2 weeks, that would be, see, today's the 27th. By Monday, the 13th.
You guys get it to us by Monday, the 13th. It may take Shane, I don't know, Shane, how long you think?
Just for us to send you a list of what
Just-
we'd like
yeah.
to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then-
And
this is what
I
we'd like
think,
to see.
I think
That's our
after-
homework.
Yeah, and I think after that, then Mr. Smith, SMITH, Shane Smith, that's sitting back there in the corner, who I absolutely know, he can then, I'm sure that there are going to be duplicate requests. He can sort of ferret out through all of that, what the actual requests are, and then how much time it's gonna take him to pull some logical information and format that up for us to review. So I think if we have everything by the 13th, give him a few days to go through that, get back to us with sort of a time frame on when we can expect that data back.
Yep, that's
Okay.
what I was about to ask him, is what he thought his time frame
Yeah.
would be, but.
And we
then I
know
do
you
think
guys
it's
have been
im-
working on it, so.
You
You guys have been working on it. This probably, I wouldn't think I had a ton since I know you guys are doing what you're doing, so.
And then I do think it's important that we, give the public and the teachers and the staff plenty of notice of when the meeting is gonna be so that they can come and hear and also be able to provide feedback and comments, because I think, that's very important in keeping folks, employees happy, is listening, and letting them be heard, and then, acting, on that, so that'd be great.
I also wondered too about this. I think it's gonna be good to have a work session, but I also wonder, moving forward, it's a long-term kind of thing that is not just a one-time solution or a one-time raise or something like that, whatever that might be. So I wonder if we have I don't know what the solution would be, to have
It
a
should-
report out.
Part of your budget process, for sure.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
gotta
one
be
of the
part of
first things that you look at in a budget, at least when I'm doing a budget, that's something you always look at first. So maybe we
Right.
can do a thorough review of that.
Something like that, and just talking about, again, ways that we can be creative and really be deliberate about what our retention and our recruitment efforts are within the district.
And that's a
Honestly-
good point, having those types of numbers are gonna be important too. What's our retention rates, how many positions are open, stuff like that.
And honestly, I like the thought of doing like short-term and more longer-term plans too, because it just can't.
Like a
I mean,
strategy.
right, we might not be able to compete short-term, but if we've got a commitment.
See, and that's
Yeah,
kind of what
that would
I
be
said,
nice.
is that we won't be able to reel these other districts in this year.
Yeah.
And maybe not even next year, but over a 4 to 5 year period, hopefully we can. I think from what I've been told, that there was a time frame that the salary schedule was kind of neglected. And right now, we're in the process, we've given 4% over the last 2 years. So I've talked to some other districts that have gone and given that big, large 5%. And I asked them, actually, some of them this weekend, hey, what are you guys doing this year? And they're like, we may not be able to do anything for the next 2 years. So
Okay.
those are just things that we'll need to consider. Or you guys will need to consider. We'll provide you the information and,
All right, March 13th is the first magic date.
yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Graves.
It's not beating me. Okay, there it is. I want to thank you all for all the y'all that have come in the schools and go to site-based meetings and come checking things out. Come see us anytime you want to, please. We'd love to see you. I'd love to see you. I don't see anybody hardly. So if it ain't fun, make it fun. Y'all have a good evening.
All right. Moving on, item 7 is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Before we approve, could we see if we want to remove any items?
Is there a motion to change any, how?
We could just pull out a couple of items. So for instance, I'd like to pull out items C and G. So the consent agenda would be all the items except that. We would approve the consent agenda and then we would discuss items C and G separately.
Can we not do that and then vote on the consent agenda,
Or
or?
if we vote to approve it, we're voting to approve A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J, and I don't want to do that. I want to pull out a couple.
I think we can pull them out and then vote on the rest of the consent
Right.
agenda and then speak about those items separately.
They would be voted separately.
Right.
That was item C and item G.
Yes, please.
So is there a motion to remove items C and G from the consent agenda to discuss separately?
We haven't typically done it that way. We've just kind of pulled them out, but I can make a motion.
Okay, I'm confused. Angel, what do we need to do here?
Typically, what we've done is just pull them and discuss them, and then approve the consent agenda if you, however, or not approve.
So is there a motion to, well, so how do we approve it? We've got to have a motion to approve the consent agenda without items C and G.
I think that's what you would say.
Yeah.
So is, okay, I thought that's what I asked, I'm sorry.
No, sorry.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda without items C and G?
So moved.
Okay, that is a motion by Ms. Glass and a second by Ms. Springate. Any discussion on any of the items remaining in the consent agenda? I have one question. On the Cintas contract for the district AEDs, do we currently have AEDs? Are
We do.
these
We-
replacements?
We have AEDs, and we are replacing some extremely old AEDs.
Okay.
Is what we're doing, and we're actually adding 2 more that would help with baseball location, and I can't recall the other one. Can anybody else recall the other one? But it would be, if it's replacing 12 and adding 2 more, but it's also adding the rest of our AEDs to their service schedule, which means they come in, make sure batteries are checked, change the pads when they need to be changed. They do all the maintenance and upkeep, which relieves us of the liability that someone doesn't grab an AED that is not functional.
Yeah.
And were those monthly checks that are included in that?
I think
Those
they are
service?
monthly checks.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they are.
Okay. Any other comments?
Do we have an update on what we discussed last month with the quarterback club, that contract?
Yeah, it's, apparently the quarterback club needs, the dollar amount of insurance, and we have, Mr. Smith has sent that to the carrier to get that exact amount, and that's all that's left.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes 5-0. Okay, so we'll discuss on the consent agenda, item C and item G. Ms. Springate?
Yes, I just had a couple of concerns about item C. It relates to the last item listed. It's an out-of-state travel request for Mr. Atkins for a San Antonio, Texas conference. And first, I guess my first question is, normally we have these, there are attachments that detail exactly, like you get a conference brochure and a kind of a breakdown of the costs, and I didn't see that attached.
Are they all attached?
They're not always attached, Ms. Bailey.
Usually.
It's whatever is given at the time, so when I put that together, I put the estimated cost on there for what all the items were included. But I did not attach the conference agenda.
Okay, well,
But we don't always have the conference agendas attached to them either.
yeah, I like to see that kind of breakdown. I think it's important to kind of know, instead of just the total cost. And then the second thing is, the dates of the trip were 2/16 to 2/28, and you're here, so I think the dates are correct.
To what?
I'm sorry, I typed it up real quickly. I was sick at the time, so it was 3 days.
Okay, so 2/18? 2/18,
Yes.
gotcha. So want to make sure that's correct.
Yeah, if you called me this morning, I would have fixed that before you all saw it tonight. I'm sorry about that. I'll make sure it's fixed.
What would that have made it, 12 days? Surely you didn't think I was going 12 days to
Well,
a
I think
conference?
that's why the question, it was
I
a
mean,
little
that
funny.
is a
so,
little out of the
yeah.
ordinary to be gone for 12 days.
Yeah, I thought you were back. I thought it was probably just a typo, but I wanted to make sure it was corrected before we voted on it and approved it. And then the next thing is, just the communication issue. You know, I feel like anytime that, you know, you're gonna be out of the district or out of the state, that would be something you would notify us before, prior to. I think that's important because, you know, number one, it's good communication, but number two, when we're asking for the taxpayers to reimburse, we wanna make sure that we're following policies and procedures. And so that's all I really have to say about that.
So let me ask you this, let me clarify. Do I need to notify you when I go on vacation? Because I usually go to the beach on vacation.
Typically, I have an employer, and for my employer, what I do if I'm gonna be out of the office or if I'm gonna be at a conference and expect to be reimbursed by my employer, typically what I do is I always notify my supervisor.
Right, I agree,
So
and I agree
yeah,
with
yeah.
that, but like
I feel like,
vacation, I
mean,
need to let you know about vacation and
I mean, I feel like, yeah.
I think policy
I
says
don't
if I'm
think-
out
yeah,
2
I don't
straight
think
weeks.
I don't think anybody's asking for approval on the vacation. I
No,
think
just
it's,
that we need to know
just
out
to
of the
know if,
office.
when out of town or out of district, out of town.
Sounds good.
I don't think anybody's asking you to ask for
Sounds good.
Thank you.
approval. Thank you.
And I think too, just along those same lines, you know, for the rest of our staff, they're required to submit their request for out-of-state travel in advance in order to be reimbursed or to be able to attend. And I just want to make sure that we're following that same and holding ourselves to that same standard. Because I don't know what, you know, if we have instances where staff submit their information after the fact, if it's still reimbursed or not, but I think that that's a fair thing to think about, and I wouldn't wanna have different standard for our staff, district staff, in these instances and something different for ourselves.
We do retroactively approve things.
Okay.
We do that quite often. But completely understand, and it was completely overlooked.
Yeah, that's fine.
Completely
Understood.
understand.
Item G.
Do you wanna just go ahead, just make it clean and vote on that one so that we don't forget? Yeah, so a motion.
Okay, is there a motion to approve item C?
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Brickler. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Glass. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Motion passes 3-2.
And then, the next thing that I asked to be pulled out was just the code of conduct. I have noticed and been very appreciative that we've had, several donations to cover lunch charges. I've seen that on our request, and I know we recognized the company for doing that, and I'm very appreciative. And so my question is about the policy, the change in policy. It is page 1 of the suggested revisions, number 4. We're gonna be removing the statement, if the student account exceeds the maximum charge amount, a nutritious meal consisting of a cheese sandwich, fruit, and milk shall be served in place of the regular meal. This meal shall be free of charge and non-reimbursable of food service. So if we're taking that out, Mr. Wells, does that mean that we're going to just provide a regular meal in its place? I just don't want them to get nothing for lunch. You know what I mean? I wanted to double check.
Yes, and that has been our practice, and so this policy change is a little behind what we've actually been doing, but yes, it would be providing them a regular meal.
I would be
Thank you.
appalled that we would only offer a child a cheese sandwich anyway. I'll just be honest with you.
Yeah, and again, I'm not.
That is completely unheard of and irresponsible to even have that in a policy that we would offer you a cheese sandwich.
I just wanted to make sure we're not offering nothing. Like, I want to make sure that that means that what Mr. Wells just let us know. So I wanted to double check that before I voted and approved for a child to have 0 lunch. So thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to approve item G, the 2023-2024 Code of Conduct update?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Ms. McCown. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to the regular agenda. Item A, accept notification of personnel matters. Do we have a motion to accept notification of personnel matters?
So moved.
Some motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Ms. Springate. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Next item, can we have a motion to accept notification of payment of bills?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion?
I had a question. This is the warrant that we get that was attached to the agenda. I just had a question about one item, and I don't know if anybody will be able to answer it right off the top. But on page 13 of the warrant, I just wondered what Eckert LLC is, and there were it says construction services, for $20,000 and $130,000 year to date.
Yeah, those are DPOs for the construction of the new high school.
Okay.
So, yeah,
DPO,
direct purchase order.
okay.
Yeah, so those fall within the major contracts that we award through the bids, and then vendors purchase supplies and materials directly. And that's what we refer to as a DPO, but direct purchase order. That saves us some sales tax and those sorts of things. But Eckert's is, just looked at those last week, so jog my memory when you said Eckert, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the January 2023, too many 23s. A motion to approve the minutes of the January 23rd, 2023 board meeting.
So moved.
That was Ms. McCown?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Item D, do we have a motion to approve the creation or amendment of positions?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass
Second.
and a second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion on this one?
I do have some discussion. I don't know if we're gonna go over what the request is or.
Yep, the request is for approving student worker job descriptions in the area of technology and ETC. ETC is our after-school childcare program. And upon approval of this job description, the salary schedule will need to be amended to add the positions with an hourly wage of $10. That's for all of our friends watching and listening.
The ETC program, and actually, the tech students as well, will be turned into what we hope to be a pathway, an early childhood pathway, which will then hopefully again bleed over to more workers in our ETC program. Also, our tech help desk, instead of sending our devices out to have them repaired, we get $10 for every repair we do ourselves. So Dr. Rayburn has put together a program that will allow our students to be led by one of his technicians. And we will actually repair our own devices instead of having to put them in the mail or FedEx, whatever, to wherever they need to be to have a warranty repair. We can take that and then also offset what we're paying students.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, I understand there were a couple of items relating to two positions. What I'm talking about something different.
flipped around.
The agenda item we're on right now is the requesting
Did I
board
do the wrong
amendment.
one? Did I read?
That's okay, it's a little confusing. I'm in the central office front desk position from a .5 secretary / .5 account clerk to a 1.0 secretary. In addition, giving the removed .5 accounting clerk position back to the finance department, improve efficiency of both the assistant superintendents and the finance office. Anticipated salary would be $14,000 to about $22,000. And then the second one has to do with nurses' employment contract. I don't have a question about the second one. The second one, I would, be in favor of doing. But I do have just a general overall concern about the first one. A few months back, I had requested that we get a listing of all the positions that have been added at central office since Mr. Atkins came to the district about a year and a half or so ago. And then, Ms. McHale, you had kind of commented that it would be good also to, because I wanted just a listing of the positions that we've added, the dollar amount that we've been spending on them. And then you had commented that possibly it would be good also to see what positions we have that are open or not filled, and what, possible cost savings would be associated with that. And I just really feel like at some point we have to step back as a board and look at the big picture, and we haven't done that. When we add these positions piecemeal, most of the time not even knowing the cost, and I do appreciate that the cost was included tonight, but most of the time not even having an estimate of cost, it can get very away from us very quickly. And so I think that, I would like to look at this holistically, and instead of voting on one position this month and maybe one position next month, to see what the entirety of the situation is, the whole picture, so that we can, just make good decisions long-term and short-term. So I would really like to see that listing with the associated costs.
So personally, I think that listing needs to be part of what we're going to be reviewing as part of the salary schedule updates and the budget and all of that. I think it's really difficult to say we won't approve a position this month because there might be another one next month. I don't think that's really fair, because I think things change all the time, and we're not going to be able to say what's happening next month because we don't know what's happening next month. I do agree and understand it would be nice to know how many cumulatively this year we've done so far. But I don't think that we should be holding up a position this month because we might have to approve another one next month. I understand holistically what you're talking about, but I disagree with holding this one up.
I will say this position, and I know this sounds completely odd to you guys because I've never heard of such a thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Garrett or Mr. Smith, but this position was paid two different rates of salary throughout the day. One half a day was paid at a certain rate, the other half was paid at another one. Now, to me, that's not fair to an employee for us to ask that. Garrett, am I correct? Come on up here. Come on. You're not afraid of the microphone. I've seen you in action, pal.
No, I'm not. So the reason this is coming up now is we've had a recent resignation at the front desk. So anytime you walk into the central office, you've got the front desk person there. That position for many years has been a split position. It's been a half secretary, the secretary to me, the assistant superintendent, and it's been a half account clerk. And so it helps out the finance department as well, managing things like time clock. And since we had a resignation, I thought it would be a good time, just given, the duties in the areas of HR and the duties in the student services area, I'd really like to have a full-time secretary. And so that's why I brought it up tonight. And then, but also those account clerk duties still need to be done. And so I just want to give that position back. But, I would like to have a full-time secretary, so.
And again, that's one
my
of the things we
request.
run into, that our employees have, this employee left for just a secretary's position. She wasn't having to do all the extra stuff. We can't continue to pay folks less and keep piling duties on when they can go somewhere else and do one job for more money. It's just hard to compete with.
Well, and again, I do appreciate that, but I also understand that we only have one pot of money. There's one pie. And when we slice it up to add positions at central office, that means we are slicing it up so that we are not able to add those positions in the schools. And I do feel like, if we only have, say $100,000 this year, we need to decide, do we want to add a secretarial position, finance position, or do we want to, add reading or math interventionalists? So I just think that it's really important to have that kind of big picture and an idea about, what percent we're spending on central office staff versus other districts. What
I
percent
agree
we're
with you, but that
spending.
kind of says we don't value what these folks do.
No, and I'm not saying that at all. I'm just
That's
saying
kind of what it sounds like. But
we have so many dollars that we can spend on salary, and we need to
agree 100%.
prioritize.
Well, I think we have to also realize that all the hats that Mr. Wells and his office does and the things that they do for our kids. So to say that it's not benefiting our students and we're not spending money on our students, I don't think is completely accurate. Because I think our central office also very directly affects our students and supports our students. So I think that's something we just have to remember. And I agree, to get that list and have that conversation in the salary workshop, I think that's very wise. But I think we have to remember that, it takes a village to support our kids. So I think just hiring somebody in our central office to help Mr. Wells in his office and help finance a little bit is still helping our students.
Oh, I agree, and I don't think anyone believes that Mr. Wells doesn't do a good job.
Yeah, we have tried to
But
listen
again,
to
we only
what-
have so much money we can spend on salaries, so we have to decide the priority of how we're gonna spend that. And to be able to do that, we have to kind of have that information and have those discussions.
Okay, go
I do-
ahead.
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah, infrastructure, it's always a challenge between balancing infrastructure and general operations. And one of the things that we're already talking about doing is pulling back and looking at the big picture. I do understand that there's a need for this as well, and the fact that you just had a resignation and you realize that maybe that resignation was caused by the fact that there were so many job responsibilities and the pay was a little funky, it sounds like, of how that worked, that this is a need that's been identified to address that situation. So I definitely think it's a good idea to address the need that is going on now, and at the same time pulling back and taking our look like Ms. Springate's talking about. And we kind of have to fix what we need to fix now. And also, we talked about short-term, long-term goals. I think we need to do it all. And I think this is an example of taking care of a short-term goal while keeping in mind the very important long-term goals that we are talking about, so.
Gary, I am correct on that pay, right? Part of it was one rate of pay, the other part of the day was a different.
Yeah, where it was a split position, it was for 4 hours a day. They made wherever they were on the secretary line of the salary schedule, and then for the other 4 hours, it was the account clerk 2 portion of the salary schedule. Yeah, so it was
I mean, I'm
2
surprised we
different
could even
rates.
get somebody to agree to that, first off.
I'm sure they like the higher pay scale. I don't know that I would object, like as a secretary, to getting extra pay if I did the finance hat. I think that'd be nice, but could I ask that we separate these? When you ask for a motion, that you could separate these 2 items? So for instance, I would make a motion that we approve requesting
understand.
the board amend the nurse's employment contract from 182 days to 185 days to cover the mandatory training days.
Yeah, and those mandatory training days, or the Cumberland Valley have those mandatory days, and they will be in providing the telehealth services for us, and they require those, so we can't ask those folks to do that for nothing.
So I make a motion.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes
Oh,
5
she
to
wanted to
0.
separate the two and just,
That was for the first one.
okay, I'm sorry.
So now, is
Okay,
there
I
a
thought-
motion to approve, what is the position called again?
The central office
Central
front desk
office.
position.
Central office admin
It's the
position?
front office secretary,
Front
really is
office
what it is.
secretary. Is there a motion to approve that position?
So moved.
A
Se-
second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion? Any further discussion? All those, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. So with the position for Mr. Wells, would that person still be responsible for working at the front desk?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they do that and then assist. Like,
Support him.
if I call Mr. Wells' office and he's tied up, she usually answers the phone.
Yeah,
whoever-
that's one of the primary challenges of the position is, our office is very busy. We get a lot of phone calls and a
That's
lot of
really what we
of
have to have a sub
visitors.
for too, if we.
Yeah, and so they spend a lot of time just managing the people that come in and out and the phone calls we get. And so then to also have time to be able to do some of the clerical work that I need done on top of what they've been doing for the finance office, it's been a real challenge.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the motion passes 4 to 1. Okay, and I apologize, I pulled out the consent agenda item that I read earlier, so apologies for that. Let's see, so next is item E, approve LPC facilitator contract. Is there a motion to approve that contract?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Did we also need to vote on the nurses' employment contract?
I think
Did we
that
pull
was
that
the-
out?
we did
That was
that.
the first
was
one.
I think that was the first one. Yeah, see, I got, yeah,
You voted yes.
I got confused on it as well, Mr. Brickler.
Listen, I've been confused all night. Okay, so the motion was by Ms. Glass for the LPC facilitator contract. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. McCown. Any discussion?
I would just note that the LPC plan is not due until, I think, 2025.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that as well. Does this have to do with the?
It's every 4 years that,
Yeah.
that you do. The previous board had voted to start the district facilities plan, to redo the district facilities
For
plan.
an amendment?
For amendments, because of some discrepancies maybe, and we found some discrepancies, am I right, Mr. Smith, already?
That's correct. We found discrepancies at 2 locations,
What discrepancies?
mostly with dates, years of construction, which are directly impact the facility plan and the needs assessment as far as
The
the,
capacity at Southside as well, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, I believe that's correct.
Because the capacity at one point was considerably higher than it was in the last DFP, and Southside hasn't shrunk any. It's the same size building as it was prior to.
Is this something that could be handled just with, a change of the dates and,
Any change to the
Back up
district
the
facilities plan
capacity.
has to be done through,
I think we could do an amendment though and not.
The amendment is requiring the whole thing to open up again. I
you
sat
can do
through
the
this.
amendment, you still have to
this
do the
past
meetings,
week,
it just
yeah.
shortens how many, you have to reestablish a committee, which we have done, I think, at this point. And it just reduces the number of meetings you have to have instead of, but from what I can gather, from what Mr. Smith can gather, we have to do the full-blown meetings, am I correct? We're
Yeah.
not just doing an amendment?
That's correct. I spoke with Mr. Eaton, who's on the contract that we're recommending. He does these meetings for several districts, and we couldn't get away with a finding. A finding would only impact
Finding, I'm sorry,
one
that's what it-
school. I think that's the most simplistic avenue to move forward, but it doesn't really fit our scenario because we've got multiple issues through the K-Fix process that we need to identify.
Well, and Mr. Smith, correct me again if I'm wrong, but some of the importance of this is our needs. And our needs are greater than what were reflected on the initial district facilities plan. Now, why is that important?
We get funding
It
based
affects
on
our
the
funding,
need,
yes.
right? The state of Kentucky has talking about a pie that has to be split, as referenced earlier. There's a pie for district facilities. And so the larger your unmet need is through these K-Fix and DFP processes, allow you to get a larger slice of that pie through the funding mechanism. So,
Even to the point that some districts get monies for schools. I know in Pike County, we got some funding that wouldn't allow us to completely rebuild the school, but it was a complete renovation. We had to keep the footprint, which is crazy, because we could have built a school for what we renovated that school for. But that was free funding because of our DFP needs.
yeah.
And I haven't been through that training lately, Ms. McHale, but it sounds like if we're gonna reopen this, we're just gonna be talking about changing the dates of construction that you think are incorrect in a couple places, and then looking at the capacity at Southside, which may be due to different ways of computing that, from one plan to the next. But I don't believe that just reopening that would change our, the amount that we're reimbursed. I don't know that the state looks at that if districts reopen it in between every 4 years. My impression was that is something that's kind of divided up, that pie is divided up when those plans go in, and they're looking at the needs of the entire state. So it's not, we wouldn't get more
But
money in
I think
funding.
I think it also affects how something could be ranked differently. And if something is.
And the
raised in a
ranking is,
phase one,
is
phase
where you
two,
could get the
But is
extra
there
money.
extra
That's
money
where-
now
but
after
it-
the money's already been divvied
It
up?
just, it could affect how we use money that we have.
Okay, so we wouldn't necessarily get more funding like Mr. Atkins is talking about by
Eh,
redoing
I
it
think
right
we
now?
don't, I think the answer is we don't know until
Isn't it
we
every year,
do it.
Mr. Smith, that we receive funding based on what our needs are? Am I correct?
I would have to double check, but I think that's accurate because they do evaluate that more frequently than every 4 years based on your, because part of
Sarah,
the
do you know? Can you point us in that direction?
I can look into it, I do not know the exact answer, but I do know that when they distribute that money, they're going to be looking at the DFP that you have on the website, the most current one. So it's not like they're gonna be looking at one that you did before, they will be looking at the most
Yeah.
current, but I don't know, I can't answer that question.
I was in the same training that Ms. McKell was, and he did mention that when you do have an amendment, that if there's enough things that would qualify for an amendment, that they recommended that basically amendment was gonna just do it, you were gonna do basically the same process that you would have done for your original DFP, but that was just maybe a few less meetings, exactly what you said. And it was my understanding that there would be a potential to increase your revenue, that's the whole reason why you would do an amendment, is because it could, to have the most accurate DFP could affect your funding. This was my understanding. Was that your?
So, a question, since it's been recommended that we open it back up and redo it, it's possible we could get increased revenue from this. What's the downside of doing this over again? Besides, I mean, obviously there's gonna be time and meetings.
Yeah,
but what's,
the downside will be 10 meetings between now and June.
Yeah, right, but we have to have it to them first of June, I think, in a so.
What kind of total cost are we looking at for the entire process?
So, this contract is $4,500 and I think we paid Ross Torrent $40,000 to do the K-Fix, if I'm not mistaken. That would be, I'm not aware of any costs outside of that.
So about $45,000?
Yeah.
And has Ross Tarrant already been paid for that?
I'm not sure.
They have completed
Has
the
already
work,
been-
I'm not
Yeah,
sure if they've
they
been
have-
paid yet,
yeah,
or if
that
they
was
have
done.
completed the work.
Yeah, that was done prior, so they were definitely paid. We didn't stick you on the bill, right?
Well, to be clear, the K-Fix,
Invoice monthly,
yeah.
on it, and I know that last month, we were in the schools doing the work on the K-Fix.
Yeah.
So we will be billing on that shortly, but we did the work in January.
Yeah, I thought the
and
work had already been
But
done.
we paid for the first one, right? The first K-Fix report, did you do that, or was that done by the previous architect?
The first K-Fix report was done by a different architect.
Okay.
So this is the first time we've ever done the K-Fix report. We worked with you for the DFP process, but we've never done your K-Fix before.
Okay.
Yeah, and to be clear, the K-Fix process that was done in January has not been paid yet, so just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that.
And I think the only other thing that we have talked about, I think constantly since I've been on the board, is the state of the facilities in this district. And it is my belief that we do need to revisit this, look at it again. We found major structural issues in the high school, not that that was overlooked, but things happen in a district that has as many buildings as we do, and a lot of them are aging. So to me, keeping an eye on $45,000 when it could potentially save us, what was the structural, $350,000? You know, I think that is money that is, that's well spent when we talk about the millions and millions and millions of dollars of investment in this community for our facilities.
And just to be clear, we have a current facilities plan that the state requires to be done every 4 years, and ours is current. And we could look at our facilities and any needs, or look at that plan and see the needs on that at any time.
So that's correct. However, just like Ms. McHale just mentioned, I'll just give you one scenario why it's important that we're redoing this now. I started in the district in May. I became aware of the middle school roof issue shortly thereafter. I met with the roofing contractor that this district has used for many years. The roofing contractor confirmed with me that the roof at the middle school will have to be replaced in the next 5 years. That roof is nowhere to be mentioned on the current DFP process or plan. That won't be an insubstantial amount of money to replace that roof. So, not that there are a ton of those things that were left off the DFP, but were enough, and the number that was documented on the DFP from my experience led me to believe that it would be well worth our while to follow through with this process and to get another DFP done to make sure that we have all the items that at least we're aware of added to the process. Because if it is not on that DFP process, we cannot use restricted dollars to go repair that item in 3 or 4 years, whenever it comes available to need to be replaced. So that is why I felt like that we needed to pursue the DFP process again.
Let me ask you, is the middle school roof on the K-Fix report as a need that would be within that time frame? Is that something that's listed? Because I seem to recall that, I tend to believe that it was on the K-Fix report already.
I don't think that it was.
I would have to go back and look
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
I mean, it may have been mentioned in the K-Fix, but it's not listed on the DFP from everything that I recall. And the DFP.
Right, I don't think we did list any renovations
The
to that middle school
DFP would dictate whether you could use the restricted dollars or not. The K-Fix is more of an inventory process. You know, you have a roof, it's X amount of years old, and the age definitely drives that process more than anything. But as Ms. Lemire and Mr. Hughes, as we've gone through that process, you know, I've pointed out a couple of things that we need to make sure it's noted on this K-Fix process. It may not meet the age requirements for you to list it, but we have a roofing contractor that's telling us, for example, with this middle school roof, that it's going to have to be replaced in 5 years. Well, that's not inconsequential to me, and it needs to be noted on our documentation process so that somebody at KDE is seeing that, hey, you've got a 20-year-old roof that's going to have to be replaced in 5 years. That doesn't fit within your guidelines for your K-Fix process, but it's still going to have to be addressed. So that was the reason that we wanted to do that.
The structural, as Ms. McHale said too, the bleacher structural that had the whole top of the bleachers shut down was not located on the DFP either. I can't imagine that wasn't there because concrete, it's both sides. And both had split, so.
Okay, any other comments? All right, then, all those in favor of approving the LPC facilitator contract, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the motion passes 4-1. Item F is adopting the Council for Better Education resolution. Do we have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Glass. I'll second that. Mr. Atkins, do you want to just briefly discuss what this is and what your role is?
Yeah, it's the passing of a resolution that would allow us to, we join, for the most part, the Committee for Better Education, which has filed a lawsuit against public funds going to private schools. So they were very successful in their initial lawsuit. So what they have done then is, this is a nonprofit and they have to have dollars for attorneys, those types of things. So basically, I think this weekend they said they spent approximately, and districts across the state joined this committee and
We
they
did
pay
as
this.
well, right?
Yeah,
We
you
were
did the
part of-
last time, and
I
yeah.
knew,
So
I was
so
just
this,
asking
and
so we could-
25,000 or 250,000 is what they spent on legal fees last time, and I think they estimated they had saved somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million for public education with that lawsuit. So this one would be fighting the amendment that would allow the constitutional amendment. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay.
What kind of cost are we talking about?
Oh, it's minimal. I say minimal. Oh, wait a minute, wrong one. Shane, do you recall? Let me get it pulled up here. I can tell you though, it's right here attached. Council for Better Education, there should be a, well, maybe the cost isn't attached. Well, now, I do apologize for that.
Do we know approximately how many districts have joined so far? Like,
I do not.
No.
You know, and honestly, I recall we did join initially, and that might have something to do with the cost. They might divvy it up differently if you get a bunch of districts.
It's like $5 per student, I think, is what it is. It runs out to being, for us, about $15,000–16,000. I can't tell you how many districts have joined. I've not heard anybody that hasn't joined yet. And we talk about, superintendents talk about this stuff fairly regularly. Every Wednesday we have a call, and I've heard several already say they have passed. They have passed it, so yeah. And initially it was this committee has been around since 1987 or 88 because they're the ones that filed the initial lawsuit for CARE, the Committee for Better Education. So it's been a long-standing deal. It just hadn't. This may be this is the second time they've requested funds or asked us to join a resolution, sign a resolution, because the first was when this first lawsuit that they had a year ago.
Any further questions or commentary? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes 5-0. And our last item in the regular agenda is approving the change order number 4 for the high school project. Side note, can we move this one up in the agenda next time?
Absolutely.
So that we can, I don't know if we could even add it under, because it's an action item, if there would be a way to add it under E, the high school update. Can we do an action item there, or does it have to be in the regular agenda?
I think you can do an action item wherever you guys
Okay.
want to do it. I think you can put it wherever you want to put it to vote on it.
Okay.
I mean, it's
All
your
right, I'll
agenda.
take a look at that for next time, so
Yeah.
you don't have to hang out
And
here.
Clay's
all of you.
he's got an hour,
He
10,
does,
15-minute
yes.
drive
So
home.
I'm trying to be respectful
Yeah.
of your time as well, so.
We'll do whatever works best for you all.
Thank you, Clay.
You want to walk us through this change order?
Yes, so change order 4 is a combination of two items. The first one for, I believe, starting last month, you've heard me discuss some of the clay seam that we found during the excavation. This structure is supposed to bear on bedrock, and to ensure that it does, that's why we're going around the footprint of the building and drilling a 5-foot hole every 25 feet. During the original geotech report, they only do so many holes throughout the entire site. You can't really get down to that tight of a grid in a geotech report. So essentially, the test holes are still a exploration once we get to that subgrade elevation. There were two seams discovered in the E-wing, which is why I discussed earlier we had went on into the F area of the building and are moving towards the E-wing. One seam was 18 to 24 inches and spanned, it kind of snaked, but it was roughly a couple 200 feet long. And then the second seam was very large, compared to what we've seen on site so far. It was 48 inches wide. We were able to do a test hole at 10 foot to realize that it was at 10 foot deep, it was still 4 foot wide. At that point, we sent that information to the geotechnical engineer and the structural engineer, and their recommendation is on the small one, it ranges from 2 to 3 feet deep, 18 to 24 inches wide. They recommend just excavating it out and filling it full of lean concrete. And then on the larger one, we was able to work together and dig. They have recommended digging to 10 foot deep, filling 7.5 feet with shot rock compacted in lifts, and then a 30-inch lean concrete cap on top. There really is no other option. That is the recommendation. So
The 0103 RL Cottle is just for the exploration, finding the seam, and documenting its extents, and then the excavation of the seam. 0304-02 is the 188 yards of the structural flow field that it will take to fill the clay seams. So that, then the PR4 is a proposal request issued by CMTA, and it is, I believe I saw that the drawings and some of it was wrong that is attached, but it's basically the addition of mechanical insulation that wasn't shown on the drawings. There was also some pump changes, but those were a deduct in that proposal request. So the total cost of the two items is $37,989.75.
Any impact on timing?
No, not right now. That we was able to shift into there also is approved weather days, which is 6 additional weather days for the month of January. So that part of this does affect the schedule, but not the remediation. Now, most likely forthcoming, the structural engineer will design spread footings that go over this to distribute the weight to make sure the footings are resting on bedrock, and that may lead to additional time, but we don't know yet. So.
What will the approval of this bring our contingency to?
That was attached with it. I've started providing you with a detailed contingency log for every meeting. You would now be at $2,438,045.50.
Available.
Yes, after this, assuming the approval. It started out with $3,016,000.
Thank you.
Yep.
So 80%, I see that, right? We'd still be at 80%?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Did I ask for a motion on this already? I don't think so. Can I have a
So
motion
moved.
to approve? Okay, Ms. Glass?
Second.
Second by Mr. Brickler. Any other questions or comments on this item?
No, I would just say I appreciate that document that you're providing after we do change orders, because it's just so hard to keep things in context and to be able to know, what's spent on all the change orders to date and what's remaining is very, very helpful.
Yep.
I agree.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Ratliff.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Lemire. We are going to take a quick 5-minute recess before we get to the treasurer's report. You okay? Okay, I think we're back. And we will move to item 9 is our treasurer's report. And Mr. Smith.
I'll run through the balance sheet numbers real fast, and then we'll talk about some questions that you guys have. So the general fund balance as of, this is through January 31st, is $17,425,891. The special revenue fund balance is $179,812. The district activity fund balance is $460,589. The school activity fund balance $470,030. The capital outlay is $185,997. The building fund is $150,214. Construction fund is $68,660,311. And the Fund 400 has $2,029,155, $202,955 in it. Food service, $932,086, and the daycare operations, $633,104. The ESSER 2, there's an available balance of $33,730. I'll just remind you that that grant will be closed as of September 30th of this year. The ESSER 3 has an available balance of $658,412. We have gone through and that grant is obligated through technology, software purchases, device purchases. Mr. Rayburn, Mr. Asher, and I, Ms. France, we met a couple times just to make sure we have everything getting ready to wrap up with the ESSER 3 grant. So this year should basically take care of that too. Before I open up any further questions, so I received some questions from Ms. Springate this afternoon, and I wanted to try to answer that before we go any further. So she asked me about the $2 million reimbursement from the construction fund to the general fund. So let me walk through that real quickly. And I did make a mistake back in the summer when I stated that the high school project had spent $2 million worth of general fund money. I should have caveated that and said that the project had spent $2 million up to that point at that time. I assumed it was general fund money, but after looking at that, that was all not general fund. A little over $1.1 million was general fund. Previous boards and iterations of the board had done some fund transfers from restricted funds over a couple of years, so approximately $800 and some thousand of those expenditures came out of the capital outlay and the building fund. Okay, so I did say that $2 million would be reimbursed, and once I was able to do the research, really close to the end of the year, sometime in December, if I'm not mistaken, I discovered that all $2 million of that did not come from the general fund. Therefore, I could not reimburse that entire $2 million back to the general fund. Now, the residual, where's the rest of it, right? So the difference between the $2 million that were spent and the 1.1 million, roughly, whatever that number is, that I reimbursed back to the general fund is locked up in that construction project. So it's in the high school project. I'll need to reconcile that based on the bonds that were sold and get an exact amount, but it's in that project. So before we move on to anything else, does that clarify that? So I did make a mistake in what I said. I should have been more careful. That's my mistake, so I'll own that one. But the general fund did get reimbursed basically $1.1 million.
Well, I appreciate you changing that on the document and clarifying that tonight. So that $1 million reimbursement to the general fund, is that something we're going to have board discussions about and allocate that additional, that reimbursement? Mr. Atkins?
So I,
We just got it back, so I don't know that we allocated it.
so it's placed in
I
a,
think ideally we wanted to use it for the furniture in the school, but, you know,
well, as of right now, it's placed into, one of my predecessors, probably my wife, created a district cash reserve project, that evidently holding cash, or cash has been placed in before for holding, so that's where I put it until we decide what we want to do with it from a budgetary standpoint.
So I guess it was $2 million that was gonna be reimbursed, and 1 million did get reimbursed to general fund, and that million that was reimbursed to general fund, you've put in a special account,
Correct.
Is it still in general fund?
It is in general fund.
And then the other million that we didn't get reimbursed where is it and what's the plan for it?
It's in the construction project, as I just stated. It's locked up in the construction project. That money will not be able to go anywhere other than in the construction project until the construction project is finished, and then we do a fund transfer to another construction project.
whatever's left, you can transfer it to another project, like we could transfer it to our track and field. But there has to be something left first.
Okay, and so then my other question is, when I looked at our fund transfers from the restricted funds that we made restricted, we did $650,000 and then $350 and some other restrictions. So all of that was general fund money, plus the general fund money we paid the architect and the construction manager was, do you know how much that was? A couple $1 million maybe?
So when I started, there were $2 million in expenses in total. So I don't remember what the breakdown of that was, but it was $2 million in total that had been funded previously from either the general fund or the construction projects, or capital outlay and building fund to pay for those things. Because until we sold bonds in August, we didn't have any funds to pay for those expenditures outside of fund transfers.
Right, so from
That
general
had been done over a 2 or 3 year process, am I correct?
That had been done, I think, since either 2018 or 2019, the
I can't
board.
recall either.
The 18-19 year was the first year we restricted. So I guess my question is, if we restricted, a couple $1 million from general fund, and then we paid a couple $1 million in fees to the architect and fees to the construction manager, why wouldn't we be able to recoup the total $2 million that you had said we would be able to reimburse ourselves? Why wouldn't we be able to do that if clearly all of that came from general fund?
It did not all come from general fund. When I started, there were $2 million of expenditures in that high school project. 1.1 million came from the general fund. The rest of it came from 310 and 320.
Which is capital outlay, am I correct?
Capital outlay and building.
Which
So-
are restricted funds.
Which are restricted, so that's what I'm saying.
So in 18-19, we had the $650,000 restriction. And then in-
I don't have any idea what you guys did before I started here.
Well, that's something you could maybe send to us, because when I added those up, it was general fund restriction of around $2 million, which was what you had said originally. Can you add those up and get that out to us maybe in an email?
I can send you what I found that was transferred to the construction fund. So, I mean, it was whatever I transferred back, $1.1 million.
I'm just interested in seeing like how much we restricted from.
I don't know how much you restricted. That is irrelevant from how much was transferred. All I can do is put back what was transferred. I have no idea what was restricted. That would have to come from research of board minutes, and I was not here at that time. So
I think it's in our budgets. We can maybe go back and look in the budgets and see that.
there's nothing in a budget to be able to dictate what was restricted. I can't look at a budget and tell what was restricted.
Well, I
Ms.
think it
Cooper,
was
can you
around
recall
$2 million.
What it was, the initial restriction?
$2 million did not get transferred from the general fund to the construction
So
fund.
we restricted $2 million general fund dollars. Can you just kind of maybe go back and research where that money went? Because if it didn't go towards to cover expenses for the new high school, I'm kind of wondering where that went at this point.
I transferred back what had been transferred. I have no idea what was
I think
restricted.
these are questions maybe for the previous administration. I mean, because we have no idea what was restricted. I mean, none of that.
I mean,
And I
what,
think it would be important to kind of figure that out. But I added it up and it looked like around $2 million was what we were told back in July by Mr. Smith. But perhaps that can just be something that
Well, I think
I
he
can
did
search
correct
it.
himself to say it wasn't $2 million. It was $1.1 million.
I understand.
Was from
If
the
you
general
Look
fund.
at the restrictions, that does add up to $2 million. The general fund restrictions that we did from 2018, 2019 to last year, that we restricted was around $2 million. But regardless, maybe we can figure that out. But I do really appreciate you reflecting on the monthly report this time, the $2.2 million of surplus, because I think that's important and folks need to know that we had $2.2 million more in revenue than in expenses, so that's surplus. And then also that $1 million reimbursement is now showing on here. Again, I just think it's really important that the board receives accurate revenues and expenses, and that we follow our approved budget and our policies. I think that's vital to being able to provide oversight. And I also was wondering if this document, when I went to training, we used to have, and I know I've mentioned this before, but the very first column kind of let us look last year for this month versus this year for this month. And then there's also a column of encumbrances. And the lady that did my training said that we could just email her and she could show you how to get that back on the report, so that, because I think it's important to look not just last fiscal year to today, but last November to this November, last January to this January. And at some point, I do think we're going to need to really figure out how much ESSER funds have been used to supplant the budget and cover reoccurring expenses, so that we can plan moving forward. We just have to know what the expenses truly are and what the revenues truly are, to be able to plan. I know some districts have had some meetings and have talked about, how things are going to be funded in the future, since ESSER's ending.
I will say for everyone that you're not going to get an accurate report every month if you request it a week ahead of time, because there will be a week's worth of business that will have been done since he initially sent that report. So just bear in mind that it will be a week off, which could vary, greatly or very small amounts.
Just to be clear, these reports, this is from January. This is not a February report, right? For January expenditures in January.
that is up through January 31st.
So it's
But-
a month behind. So
But,
we should
but,
know that.
but those are not static document. We're still making adjustments. And we're just behind in our processing. As I've mentioned previously in some other emails to the group, and we will be behind for some time until learning catches up. So the other question you'd asked, a couple other questions actually, about the $240,000 compare in the total expense decrease by $240,000 for the December report, and that's just an adjustment. I typically do not do my debt service adjustments until the end of the year because they're always moving targets. There's a lot of moving pieces to those, and with the high school situation and trying to stay on top of the debt situation, what we were doing there, I made some adjustments based on estimates, and so anytime there's estimates, there's going to have to be adjusting entries to true things back up on the back end. So that was the reason that transfer decreased by $240,000. Your question was, what will the actual general fund amount for the defeasance be? And it's going to be slightly under $2 million. If my math is correct in the calculator, there's no errors in the calculation, it'll wind up being just barely under $2 million. And so that was the surplus that you referenced. So there's not really a surplus because that $2 million came in and then it went back out for the the bond defeasance. So I just want to be clear about that. And then the last question you'd asked about the ESSER, you mentioned that about nurses' salaries. If you look at the ESSER report, line 3, under health nursing services, that $117,673 is what we have paid in nursing salaries out of that ESSER 3 this year. And you'd asked, when do these expenses come out? They come out every payroll. So we've spent $117,000 out of that to date this year. I did find there is one guidance counselor at Safe Harbor that is also being paid out of the ESSER 3. I think that was committed to Mr. Culbertson over at Safe Harbor. I'll remove that as of June 30th of this year. But there are no other salaries have came out of ESSER 3 since July 1 of this year, since I started managing ESSER.
Thank you. I do have a question. We were told back in July that the bond defeasance, that $2 million approximately, was going to be covered by the reimbursement to the general fund.
Correct.
And so that is totally separate from the couple $1 million that we have in surplus over the expenditures and the revenue. Those are separate $2 million?
I'm not aware of the, I mean, I don't know what exactly you're calling a surplus, because their revenues, I mean, we haven't recorded all the revenues that were budgeted, so I'm not sure how we could say we have a surplus at this point when we don't have all the revenues recorded that were budgeted. Yes, $2 million came in. We brought that in. The plan was to be reimbursed from the construction fund, and we used that to defease the debt. What you have in surplus, and I will stipulate to yes, you have a $1.1 million surplus based on what I told you I transferred from the construction fund back to the general fund. That's not been accounted for in the budget. Yes, that would be a surplus. I'm not aware of any additional surplus that we keep talking about and won't be. Now, is that to say at the end of the year, June 30th, when we roll the year, get ready to close the year out, that we aren't going to have revenues over expenditures? Hopefully, if I've done a good job in managing our budget, we will have revenues over expenditures. I've shared since I've been here, I budget conservatively, always have, always will. I underestimate revenues, overestimate expenditures, so that we will always be in a good financial position at the end of the year. Now, we may have revenues over expenditures, as I mentioned. I can't track $2 million down in our budget currently as we are referencing here.
Okay, well, let me just be clear. What I'm talking about is on page 1 of the Munis report. If you look at last fiscal year, the beginning balance, and then you look at this fiscal year where we started, that is the surplus that I'm talking about. So what I'm talking about is not something from right now where you're going to be tracking things down or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is last fiscal year we ended at $7.1 million.
Yep.
And then we began this fiscal year at 9.3. So what I'm talking about, when I'm talking about the surplus, I'm sort of talking about it independently of what we're doing this year and independently of the $2 million bond defeasance that was supposed to be we were told would be covered by the reimbursement. Now we're finding out it's not, which is good information, and I'm glad to have it. So that is what I am referencing.
And again, I've tried to explain this several times. The difference between the beginning balance, that $9 million that you referenced, and the $7.9 million or whatever the budget was, that is the money that was used to pay the $2 million of bond defeasance down. So it came in, it went out in the bond defeasance. It is not in the budget any longer. It's not in the actuals any longer. It came in, it went out. The only difference is the reimbursement from the construction fund once we sold the bonds of that $1.1 million. That is your surplus.
And again, none of that, that wasn't really reflected in the budget until just last month when I was asking, and this month. And I appreciate it being in there because I feel like we have to be able to look at this and be able to see that. So when we're getting $1 million in reimbursement and that's not reflected in our, budget appropriation, that is an issue. So I just feel like I really appreciate the information being accurate and being in here and being updated And so thank you for doing that.
Well, so I'm going to respond to that because I feel like it probably worked out in a best-case scenario. Because had we budgeted $2 million back on July 1 and someone committed that money to be spent and then we spent it and we couldn't reimburse the $2 million, we'd be in a much worse predicament today than had it not been done the way that I did it. So,
Yes. No, and I don't think we should, but I do think that it's clear the board is responsible for allocating the funds, and so we have to know what funds we have to be able to allocate them, and then we have to follow that budget document. The working budget has to stay within the budgets that we put in there, or we have to do budget amendments. And again, to be clear, I'm not talking about every single bill that you pay every day. What I'm saying is, out of the broad categories in the general fund, such as transportation or student activities, none of those have gone over budget. None of those have gone over budget, with the exception of the interfund transfers, and that has gone over budget for the past 2 years, and that is something that we need to, as a board, understand and ensure that we're staying within the budgets, and if we're not, doing budget amendments, or at least understanding that's happening.
well, I will stipulate I made a mistake in not budgeting the beginning balance and not budgeting that fund transfer. It was a simple computation in my mind, 2 million in, 2 million out. My mistake. I will over budget fund transfers moving forward. Rest assured, it will never happen again. And I'm sorry.
But can we all maybe agree that we understand what Mr. Smith is saying right now, so that next month, we're not having the same discussion? Is there anything left in this discussion, Mrs. Springate, from this $2 million that is not been answered for you?
It's 1.1 and it's in.
No, the $2 million.
Surplus
right,
from
the
last year.
surplus from
Right,
the
but it's
beginning is what
not.
I'm. Oh, I understand that. I'm asking if everybody around the table understands that, and if there's any further clarification, because I feel like we have discussed this several times, and I just want to make sure that we're answering the question so that, quite honestly, we can move on next month and not spend the majority of the time talking about the 2 million. So,
I'll say from my perspective, it clicked this time more than it ever has. So I appreciate you being able to explain it and your questions too, because your questions prompted a lot of the explanation that got it to my level. I'll be honest, that I could hear the breakdown and how it went from one budget, where it went. I am happy that we have the 1.1 million that we're kind of holding, and like you said, maybe we'll use it for the furniture, but as a board, we get to decide that. So now we know we have $1.1 million in an account that we need to decide what to do with in the future. So both of you, thank you for the conversation, the emails and the information sharing. Very helpful for me, from my perspective.
great. Mrs. Springate, anything else on the 2? I know
I don't have
you might have
anything
other
else
questions, but I
on
just want to.
tonight, and I did email some more follow-up questions. I do feel like it's really important that we have the discussions in an open meeting, because of course it's the taxpayer dollars, and that the forum to have discussions as a board is in an open meeting. There's no other place that we can do that. We can't, meet as a quorum, 3 or more members, and discuss any of this outside of an open meeting. It has to be done here. And so I'm very thankful that this document is reflecting accurate information. And again, I just want to see us following policy and, understanding where we are financially.
I agree,
So I do appreciate that.
and I think that, as I said in my email to you today, thank you for submitting the questions ahead of time. I think that is the single thing that facilitates the information getting out to the public in a timely and accurate manner, because it really doesn't do, and we don't have to rehash all of this anymore, but I appreciate the questions being asked ahead of time. We did go through each one of those questions that you had emailed, so the public is aware of those questions and the answers, and I think they've been answered more fully, and we've been able to get through them a little quicker and more precisely than we have in the past, so I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And also, just so the public knows, there were a series of questions submitted and have been submitted over the past, really few years. Financial questions have been submitted prior, honestly, quite a few financial questions, and even above and beyond the 3 that you answered tonight. A series of questions were submitted and responded to, thank you, and then submitted and responded to, thank you.
The Can I ask a question, Mr. Smith, before you leave? Just, I'm gonna restate what I think I understand, and you just tell me if it's right or not. So for the ESSER three funds, we have currently $658,412. Those we know have to be expended, by September 2024. And there's a plan, in place to use those for, technology devices and things of that nature. I didn't get to write it all down.
Yeah, technology devices, and there's some software obligations that we have that Mr. Asher is working with the schools on.
Okay. Thank you.
Any final questions or comments from Mr. Smith? All right. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
I took a motion for approval. Did I take? No, I did not. Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. Any additional comments? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the motion passes 4-1. Moving on, item 10 is communications. Anybody have anything to report? This is typically where I think this agenda item was added to discuss any communications that we've had with any vendors, contractors, other professional types of, this was done a couple of years ago, I think. So is there anything on that end?
I have one thing, the agenda item that I added, I appreciate you doing that, and we decided that that would be put on for reading and math interventionalists for an action item in March. And hopefully the superintendent will be able to bring us some information about numbers and how that's gone and kind of the costs and a plan maybe for funding that for next year. And then the second thing is that the bonding agent, Baird, hopefully will be here in March to discuss where we're at and answer questions and just provide an update to the public about all of that bonding kinds of stuff. I'd ask that be. Well, and again, that's something I think the public should know. So we definitely want to be able to kind of discuss that in an open meeting versus having small private meetings with her. I think it's just beneficial to have her come in and do that in front of the public, and that way any questions that can be asked openly, and hopefully it's not all bad news.
Okay. Anything else on communications?
So I don't know if it fits based on what you said earlier, but for communications, I did want to acknowledge, I asked Elaine Bailey to send me a schedule of all the SBDM meetings because I'm just really interested in everybody kind of knowing about those and participating. So she was very gracious, sent me a schedule of all the upcoming ones, and I'd like to see that continue. So just so that we're all aware of when those occur, so that as we can go to different schools and go participate in those meetings. So I think it's really important to have that information so that board members can attend if they're able to. So just wanted to thank Ms. Bailey for that, and hope that we can continue that as well.
We're thinking about keeping her.
Okay.
Can we get that schedule, Mr. Atkins? Can we get that schedule that Ms. Bailey created?
Ms. Bailey can.
you send that to everyone?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on communications?
I would just say, and this may not fit based on what you said about it being vendor related or agencies that we work with, but just kind of to reiterate the things that Mr. Graves spoke about a little bit earlier. I know all of us received some email correspondence from teachers and staff from throughout the district who have concerns about, you know, compensation and raises and what that's going to look like and how it's impacting them and affecting them. So I just want to recognize that, and we've received it and we hear that, and you know, it's something that is important to us. So we'll continue to work on that and appreciate the feedback from folks. It's important.
I will say, just to build off of that, earlier in the school year, I think I met with Mr. Atkins and Miss Bradley at one point to talk a little bit about that and explore some more options as opposed to just a 2% raise for them. And I think one of those was, and Mr. Smith might be having an aneurysm in the back as I say this, I'm so sorry. But one of the things, and I'm not the most financially educated person, I am a student, but one of the things that we talked about was incentivized pay, perhaps something where they could get paid for PD meetings, chaperoning, things like that, sponsoring an after-school club, anything that requires them to do work or be in the building after school hours. And while we absolutely, like right out of the bat, wouldn't have to do it for all of those things, I do feel like it's a very interesting option to at least consider. So I wanted to pitch that to all of you and just let you all consider it. It was something that I was pitched to by one of my social studies teachers, Mr. Lewis, so I'm sure you all could also ask him about that if you'd like more information.
So Ms. Hash, can you maybe recap that in an email? And if you have any other thoughts or collect any other information before, what was the date, March 13th, I think? Just go ahead and communicate that as part of our correspondence. That's great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll email it to you all by tomorrow morning. I'll try and
Okay, that's great.
You just invited yourself to our work meeting too, just so you know.
All right, moving on to discussion items. Item 11A is hiring the new board attorney. Mr. Atkins, did you want to just briefly?
Just open for suggestions as to how you guys want to move forward with this.
So we don't need to go through and review this information tonight. This is strictly the people that have
These are the
shown
folks that
interest in
sent
becoming our
the-
board
yeah.
attorney. So my suggestion would be that we all review this information, and it's pretty detailed information. It looks like there's five people that have submitted. That we review this, and this was a little in my foggy period because it was within the first, I think, 2 meetings of mine and Ms. Glass's board service. Was it it was a lot. Did we each, I think we each came in with, these are the top 3 or 4, because we got a lot, we had a few more, I think we had 10 or so the last time. But should we come in, each of us, with our list of those that we want to interview? That's the next step, is to actually interview these attorneys. So I think coming out of 5, I mean, we can either make the decision that if all 5 are pretty decent, we talk to all 5. If there's one that you really think, no, we can have that discussion, but I would say we can add this as an action item to the next board meeting to vote on who we're going to interview.
That's the way, that's the way I remember it. I think
Okay.
we got the information even emailed. So tonight
Yep.
we have it, take the time to go through, research it, do your due diligence. And I think that's what we did. We came back and I think everybody had like their top 3 and we kind of ranked it that way. I think we interviewed 4 or 6. We did virtual interviews. But I mean, with 5, if everybody's passionate about all 5, then I think that's a good goal to have us all come back next month with
At least 3.
at least a
And if-
couple that you want to interview.
Yeah, is that reasonable? Okay, then we don't need to discuss that anymore. The next item was the district facilities plan. So I know we had talked about this a little bit, about adding this to the agenda. We talked a lot about it at the LPC coordinator. I think, was there something else, Ms. McCown, that you wanted to, I know we talked about sort of reviewing it and maybe that's something that we need to do together.
I think so. As a board, it would be helpful to look at, and I don't know, can we look at the existing facilities plan, or are we saying that's not?
No, I think you
Okay.
should look at the existing facilities plan and,
And attached to an agenda. Do you recall the last time?
Like 2 months ago, maybe or something like
Yeah,
that. We attached
we've
it
put
to
it on a
the
couple,
attached
3
agenda.
times here
Back on.
since I've been here.
Yeah, it's been on for almost a year or so.
It may be good to attach the K-Fix report too, because I don't know that they would have that
And
necessarily.
Is that ready
the district facility plan is also on KDE's
The previous
website.
one.
the
You can
The previous
search,
facilities plan and the
because the
previous.
guy showed us how to find it at our course at KSBA. You go to KDE.
Which
and
we
then
can
it's
get
like
you a copy of this.
Facilities, and then
Angel's got it. She can get you a
DFPs, and they're
copy out
listed
tomorrow.
by county.
Send them all another copy, Angel, of the
Of the K-Fix and
the,
yeah,
well,
I'll pull it up. It was
the
on
DFP, I don't know, do we have the old K-Fix?
Yeah, I had it attached to the board meetings for like
I just assumed you would rather see just the DFP and then the new K-Fix, but we can send it all to you. That's-
I just
I
didn't know
was
if the
just
new one was ready,
thinking
so.
of having it be maybe a standing item that we can refer to each month, or that there be some exercise where we can go through and sort of, you know, barring some sort of an emergency, what are our priorities moving forward? Because I know everybody has said, or probably would agree, we don't want to find ourselves in the same situation that we have here with this building or any of our buildings becoming in disrepair. So,
Yeah.
like, what is our, what are our priorities and what are we doing with them? Do you
So
know what I mean?
that's what the
That's what the-
district facilities plan actually does. It prioritizes. There's a bunch of different, there's critical, there's good shape, you know, there's a bunch of different categories for
Yeah.
it. And then it gets prioritized into different sort of sections. So it's not necessarily a living document. It's a pretty static document. What personally I would suggest that would be helpful would be maybe quarterly to say, okay, these are the items that we've ticked off, or these are the items that are, well, maybe both. These are the items that we've ticked off, these are the items that are next on the list.
Yeah.
To do it monthly personally, I feel like it's a little bit more strategic than sort of operational. But I
I would be
would-
fine with quarterly, and I wonder too if the items that are kind of coming up on our list or those that have been ticked off, if there would be anyone from those schools that are affected, like if, you know, if Mr. Green could speak to them or whoever we need to, just to say, hey, I know this item is on our district facilities plan, it's in yellow, what does it look like, right, you know, how are we doing with that? Just so we have some status
think
where
about
it
that.
was a snapshot in time.
Yeah.
Mr.
Mr.
Smith,
Smith would
what do you
probably
think
do
about that?
Because Mr. Green reports all that stuff to Mr. Smith.
Oh, okay.
We don't just have a district facilities coordinator, we have a finance director, a district facilities coordinator, a cafeteria coordinator, and a transportation coordinator.
So the DFP is a much larger, you know, these are not things we're touching very frequently. These are larger items, really usually require bonding to be repaired. So building replacements, roof replacements, really big stuff. So I don't know, even with looking at it quarterly, there's going to be much progress on 99% of these things, if not 100% quarterly. What I would recommend, and something that me and Mr. Green have already been discussing, is I want to put together a 1, 3, and 5-year plan for things that we can touch on a smaller scale and talk through and budget and plan for appropriately for things that we need to look at on a smaller scale that we can touch out of our general fund. So now, maybe to review the DFP on a more infrequent once or twice a year, I think would probably be reasonable, just to make sure it's top of mind with what is on that list. And as we move forward, as we develop and build bonding capacity back to be able to do things, that's probably what I would recommend. And then more frequently, let's work together to come up with a more immediate, short-term a solution for things that our facilities needs that we can deal with out of our general fund. So
I like that.
I think also, I'm trying to remember if that DFP training was offered, excuse me, online, because that might be something just that you might want to review as we start this process again, because it's pretty regimented, and there's, like everything that we're
It's kind of
finding,
spelled out in
it's very
how we have to do it. How many community members, how many.
particular, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So that might be I can look and see on my,
can look, yeah.
you might want to even look at the app, the KSBA, the app from the weekend, because the handout should be on there.
And
it
Mr.
would at
Smith
least
has
have
that stuff,
the
because
links.
he can send to you, because he's just pulled
Yeah.
it recently to make sure we're following the protocol.
Okay,
I agree. I think I like Mr. Smith's idea. I mean, after attending the DFP session and having a little bit more in-depth understanding, it's pretty weedy, and it's pretty, like you said, it's
It's gonna be-
regimented.
yeah, the big
Doesn't,
things.
the name is I feel like misleading, because it does make it sound like that it's something that you're just like, we're gonna, fix this bathroom today, when it's not, it's big picture things, right? So I love the idea of a 1, 3, 5 smaller project items that we can just be aware of, that we could discuss more often. Like, that's a great idea.
Okay. Excuse me. Anything else on the district facilities plan then? All right. So next is, don't think we have a need to go into executive session today.
I think Ms. Springate, did she add a discussion item?
Math and reading
I
interventions.
wrote it down.
Yeah, and we've been over.
Oh,
Okay.
okay,
I
okay.
mentioned it a couple
Okay.
times.
Like,
because
I wrote
had
it
on
down.
my
Did I
list.
not?
Okay.
So say
I just wanted to make sure, I'm sorry. I had written it
That's
somewhere
okay,
else, the
thank
wrong
you.
place.
No, thank you.
Sorry, I'll be quiet.
No, please don't be quiet. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of our regular agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn? Ms. Springate,
Second.
second by Ms. McCowan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes 5-0. Thank
Finance
you,
Corp, guys.
everybody. Now we have
We
to
need
do
the- yeah,
the
we need the
finance
finance.
corp. So I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Woodford County Finance School District Finance Corporation Board of Directors meeting. We need to approve our meeting minutes of the January 23rd, 2023. Oh, I should say all members are present in person. I need a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 23rd, 2023, School District Finance Corporation Board of Directors meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Glass, a second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes 5-0. And a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Springate,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, 5-0. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you all.
Thank you.